University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
The Mona Lisa is only 30 inches tall. The world's hottest chili, 1 inch. And Napoleon, taller than a Great Dane, but only by 71 centimetres. Who says small can't make an impact? The Peugeot 108 Allure is now available for just $159 per month, with $159 initial rental. Our small but mighty car that doesn't have to cost you a small fortune. Peugeot Motor Company PLC, a credit broker not a lender, will introduce you to PSA Finance UK Limited. Personal finance lease, 48 months at 159, 18 plus, guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility and return conditions. You will not own the car.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Central capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, streaming on YouTube and from Jason's home in Sleepy Hollow. Welcome to Bloomberg Business Week. It is Tuesday, March 17, 2020. Well, Jason, volatility certainly continuing in the markets, but to the upside. Today is an up day in the U.S. stock market. We got more stimulus and clarity from leaders and policymakers, and that is certainly giving some comfort to investors.
Well, we have gotten used to, as you say, the volatility, the rapid ups and the rapid downs. Yesterday was a brutally down day. Today, the big question, you said it before we came on the air, is will we hold these gains? Is this optimism for real? And is this fiscal stimulus really headed our way? We're going to get into that and much more. Ask all of our experts. We're also awaiting Mayor Bill de Blasio here in New York City. But first, let's get to Doug Krisner. He's got an update on that green trade. Hey, Doug.
Hey, Jason. The day began with a word that the Fed is restarted an emergency lending facility as a way of helping U.S. companies borrow through what is known as the commercial paper market. Essentially, American corporates are going to use their short-term IOUs as collateral for cash from the Fed, and the U.S. Treasury is basically going to provide about $10 billion of credit protection against the risk that is inherent with this kind of lending. For the moment, that has seemed to have supplied a little bit of upward impetus. We also have word that the Fed and some banking regulators are reviewing several rules for banks as a way of freeing up credit. One easy option would be to further delay the impact of a recent accounting rule change for current expected credit losses. We are also told that officials are discussing options on leverage limits. Right now, we're looking at the Dow Industrial Average off session highs, but we are up about 3%. In the broader market, we have strength in utilities, consumer staple stocks, some in the real estate complex, too, moving to the upside. That's helping the S&P better by about 4%. NASDAQ Composite rising by about 4.5%. In terms of the Treasury market right now, long-term interest rates drifting up. The 10-year Treasury has added about 16 basis points or so. We're trading it with a yield now of 88 basis points. Crude oil, though, on the back foot, and that has sent energy shares down. As a matter of fact, energy, the only industry group within the S&P 500, and there are 11 industry groups in total, showing some weakness today. WTI crude oil is down about 3.4% right now, trading 27.75 in the active contract. Look at the dollar, a big gainer against the majors. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is up 1.3%, a weaker yen here at 107.43, and the euro down big against the greenback at $1.988. You're caught up on markets. Let's get back to Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, Carol, as you said, policymakers kicking into action, but it's not sort of all together now. There's no kumbaya going on here. Kind of every man for himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what we're seeing. We've had a couple different stories looking at that specifically and from our team, including our Andy Brown, head of Bloomberg New Economy. So we'll get into that in just a moment. And like we've been doing, Jason, we will be looking at the virus from several angles. We have Washington reaction and actions, what the medical community is bracing for. Our team of experts includes NYU's Dr. Ian Lusbader, very familiar to our audience, along with Stephen Skanke. He's former U.S. Treasury and White House National Security Council staff member. Perfect person to talk to, especially as we heard from Stephen Mnuchin talking about spending tens of billions of dollars in a potential bailout program and assistance program. And our last hour?
Yeah, we're going to talk companies and consumers. We're going to hear from FedEx in terms of their earnings. We're also going to talk about how you as a consumer may be dealing with this, whether it's the movies you watch, how you're investing, and where you're shopping or not. But let's set the Business Week agenda first off, Carol. Gina Martin-Adams is with us on the phone from New Jersey. She, of course, is Chief Equity Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. And there with you in Manhattan, Dave Wilson, stocks editor, author of the Stock and the Chart of the Day. Dave, quickly set the tone for us in this uptrade today.
Well, it's been a bit of back and forth. There's definitely a move higher at this point. And, you know, one group that really jumps out for me is utility stocks, because we've heard all these comparisons to 2008, 2009, you know, the last bear market, given the extent of the drop we've seen in stocks more broadly. The S&P 500 Utilities Index is headed for its biggest gain since October 2008, right smack in the middle of the previous bear market. And what's interesting, if you look at the index, you actually saw that its dividend yield, because these are the kind of shares you buy for their payouts, got close to 4% as stocks tumbled yesterday. And that's the highest dividend yield on this group in 4 years. So it's clear that people are stepping in, willing to go with a relatively defensive area of the market. And that's true more broadly as well. I mean, you're seeing, you know, the kind of defensive groups, the ones that tend to do well no matter how the economy is doing, sort of leading the way here. But then you look at, you know, these stocks, Dominion Energy, you know, utility in Virginia, up 17%. CMS Energy up almost 17%. Southern Company, big across the South, up almost 16%. I mean, the biggest gains in the S&P 500 are dominated by these utilities. And you just don't see these moves like ever, except in times of stress.
All right. So Gina Martin-Adams, come on in on the trade today and what you're seeing and what you think is either promising or worrisome.
So I'm kind of with Dave on this one. You don't usually see utilities lead a sustained rally in the equity market. As a matter of fact, utilities leadership is usually a signal of weakness, not a signal of strength, particularly with bond yields as low as they are and valuations for this group relative to the index as high as they are. The valuation multiples for utilities are at their cycle peak already relative to the S&P 500 and have only gotten more expensive in relative terms over the course of the last month or two. So I would say that it's a little bit of a sign of weakness. That said, the fact that you do have broader participation and you have groups including technology, healthcare, financials, consumer staples, basically every group in the S&P 500 except energy is up, is somewhat encouraging. I think usually at real bottoms you see rotation into laggards, and we really haven't seen that yet. That said, I do think this is a process, right? Bottoms are typically a process. We had very clear capitulation days last Thursday as well as yesterday, setting the stage for potentially still a volatile market, but maybe more of a bottoming process to start to emerge over the next couple of weeks. It remains to be seen whether we actually get that real skyrocketing sort of V-bottom, which would require rotation, or more of a choppy bottoming process, which is our view.
And so, Gina, is volatility just something we're going to have to live with for the near term until we see a real clear picture of this virus playing out medically?
I think so. I don't know that we're necessarily going to have to see volatility at yesterday's levels. I mean, yesterday the VIX index reached obviously a new high, even higher than at any point during the 2008-2009 crisis. So it seems that was probably our peak volatility point. But if you look at how traders are positioning, the spread between the 2-month and 3-month volatility contract is also at a record level, suggesting that traders are positioned for volatility to remain very, very high. I do think that said, just the information vacuum that we're in right now creates a lot of frayed nerves, a lot of concern on the part of investors with respect to where we're headed, what the real value of shares is in an environment where you can't predict earnings is tough. That said, when you have massive volatility spikes like we had yesterday, most of the time the result is pretty positive for investors willing to take on risk in those kinds of uncertain periods over the course of 12 months. And I think that's why we're likely to see pretty choppy price action as investors continually realize the fact that when everyone else is so fearful, you should probably be starting to get a little greedy.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Gina Martin-Adams, thank you so much, Chief Equity Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. And, of course, Dave Wilson, Stocks Editor, will be back with us later on with his chart and stock of the day. Carol, let's do the Bloomberg Business Week Bite of the Day, if we can. It's one number that tells us a lot. Today's number, 12.5%.
Right. Subway restaurant franchisees, they're demanding their fees to headquarters be slashed as the coronavirus pandemic dries up business. The North American Association of Subway Franchisees, it's a group representing roughly 23,500 Subway store operators. They sent a letter to the CEO over the weekend begging for relief from weekly fees that add up to 12.5% of their sales. Subway declining to comment, franchisees saying that they were charged their weekly dues as scheduled on Monday. But we'll see whether businesses change their tune, certainly as this drags on. All right, right now, let's get a check on your world and national news headlines. Over to Bob Moon in our 1130 newsroom. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Carol. President Trump wants to send Americans a check for more than $1,000 and do it in the next 2 weeks. Standing alongside the president at a White House briefing today, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said the coronavirus crisis demands quick financial action. At the same time, Trump declared that politics have been put aside by both parties.
Getting along with Democrats, getting along with Republicans, for the Democrats themselves, there's been a lot of spirit. There's been a lot of things happening that I haven't seen happen in the first almost now 3.5 years. It's been very nice to see. That's one of the good things.
It's all under discussion on Capitol Hill, as Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports.
Majority Leader Mitch McConnell promised the Senate will move quickly to the next phase of dealing with economic damage.
It's my intention that the Senate will not adjourn until we have passed significant and bold new steps above and beyond what the House has passed.
Senator Dick Durbin, the deputy Democratic leader, said the Senate hasn't acted quickly to accept the bill the House passed to help displaced workers.
Why aren't we passing this measure immediately? We should.
President Trump has indicated support for that House bill. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
A federal judge sentenced former Republican Congressman Duncan Hunter of California to 11 months in prison. Hunter had pleaded guilty to stealing his campaign funds and spending the money on everything from outings with his friends to his daughter's birthday party. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Two people who are as fascinated by the markets as you are.
What's your sense of the competitive landscape in the cloud business?
Lisa Abramowitz.
People were talking about potential regulatory pressure.
And Paul Sweeney.
Are you seeing flows into ESG ETFs?
Bloomberg Markets.
What's your main conversation today with some of these corporate executives?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
They're spending a lot of money there.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesman to the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast.
How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team?
Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived in Philadelphia. Local time is 3:05 p.m. and the temperature is 67 degrees. At this time, you are now free to use your cellular devices.
You know that feeling when you get to turn your phone on after the plane lands? You can have that feeling every time you drive. Make sure your cell phone is stowed away whenever you are behind the wheel.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Are you
They call me the drum guy, being around London, one gig to another. I carry my tom-toms, bass and stalls, snares and cymbals, hi-hat. Won't mind a helping hand while I board a taxi. That's why I choose Ola. With driver's quality assessed by DriveTech, ride the change with Ola. Download and sign up now. Enjoy no surge pricing until the 12th of April.
There's under a week to go until Mother's Day, so head to your local Asda in London. We've got personalised bath bombs for £4 each. Thoughtful gifts, unforgettable prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Offer ends 22nd of March.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £22.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband Switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. Source Ofcom fairer pricing. Price may change during your contract. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got smart breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown, today. The AA. Drive smart. See theaa.com for details.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
And with 2 minutes left, Rovers are taking off Simpson and bringing on their new 58-year-old striker, new owner, and recent Euro Millions winner, Gavin Mason.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £57 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Dear Mum, happy Mother's Day. Thank you for teaching me to live life to the fullest, to say yes to things that scare me, and to always be 100% in the moment.
Morning, yogis. Time to untether from technology and shift our presence to only this room.
Spa day soon?
I said, time to untether from technology.
Love you to the moon and back, Jelly Bean. This Mother's Day, heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Get a free card with all flowers when you use code LOVEMUM. Download the app today. Exclusions apply.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Let's get you caught up on market action. We've got a lot going on. So we've got a recovery in the equity market after that dramatic sell-off yesterday, the biggest rout since about 1987. Today, that looks as though the government is stepping up efforts to offset financial damage caused by the coronavirus outbreak. The Trump administration moving on stimulus stimulus and a goal here to send checks to Americans as soon as 2 weeks from now. We're hearing the number could be about $1,000 a pop. At the same time, the Fed today restarted an emergency lending facility to help U.S. corporates borrow through the commercial paper market. Right now, we've got the Dow up about 4.9%. In the broader market, S&P 500 ahead by 5.7%. NASDAQ comp 6% higher right now. Want to highlight shares of Boeing trading down by more than 2.4% right now. The stock is trading roughly at the lowest level in about 6 years, battered, as you might imagine, by a severely negative outlook for the airline industry. Boeing, along with the airlines it supplies, collectively pushing for about $58 billion in aid from the government. Let's change gears, talk a little bit about the hotel industry. The crisis that we're dealing with is costing the industry about $1.4 billion a week. We are hearing that Marriott International has begun furloughing what it's expecting to be tens of thousands of employees. Stock right now down by about 7.6%. In the bond market, yields moving up, 10-year Treasury with a yield of 89 basis points. Let's look at markets. Carol, Jason, back to you guys.
Just talking with the CEO of a major hotel chain, global chain, and yep, they're pretty busy right now and trying to get their heads around this. All right, Doug Krisner, thank you so much. Speaking about trying to get their heads around the situation and certainly being very, very busy is the medical community. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo saying earlier today that New York State will be in desperate need of hospital beds and ventilators soon and may need more than 12 times the existing intensive care capacity. Let's talk about the medical community and how they're dealing with the virus. Dr. Ian Lustbader is back with us, Clinical Associate Professor of Medicine at NYU Langone Medical Center, on the phone in New York. Dr. Lustbader, great to have you back with us. How are you guys coping with this?
Thanks for having me, Carol and Jason. Everyone is coping. It's sort of amazing. I just came back from the hospital doing urgent cases. All elective cases are canceled. People are being rescheduled, really to conserve equipment, and streets are deserted. There's definitely people calling in a panic. And so I think it's important to understand that the individual risk at this point is not very high of death, certainly. There are probably a number of patients, people who have an asymptomatic infection. But in terms of the medical community, really the rationale is to be careful with equipment. You certainly don't want to run out of food in the middle of an ocean voyage. And all interactions are really done with what are called PPEs, or personal protective equipment. So all the masks are disposable, the N95 masks, the gowns, the gloves. It's very intensive whenever you interact with a patient. And so the concern is really sort of conserving those if there's really a surge in the need. And that's sort of the rationale for canceling elective surgeries and so forth.
Right. So, Ian, we've talked with you extensively over a long period of time, but more recently about this virus being on the front lines. How worried are you about the system, individual hospitals, especially in heavily populated areas like New York City, essentially getting overwhelmed?
Exactly. Well, at this point, fortunately, everything is going smoothly. We've just started testing. So, for example, down at NYU, it's about 100 patients a day being tested. No results back. That takes certainly a few days. And I think there is a bit of anxiety. I think most physicians are, calm and comfortable. I think patients are certainly concerned. And I think certainly we have enough equipment now to handle things, but you're exactly right. With a population, 10, 15, depending on how far you want to draw the circle, millions of people, even if a small percent become symptomatic or more critically ill, there are contingency plans not only for the intensive care units, but for surgical areas and step-down units. So I think the governor is right in trying to prepare. The last thing you want to do is do this at the last minute. But at this point, everything seems really quite under control. The issue is, conserving all this equipment. It's ironic that many of these N95 masks are made in Wuhan, China. Yeah. And so supplies are somewhat limited. You can't just open the shelf time and time again and expect its supplies to be there. So that's really sort of the rationale to, ration these carefully, not have people come in who really are symptomatic. You have to have certain criteria to get tested. Certainly at NYU, you have to have a fever, respiratory symptoms. The worried well, we are trying to reassure.
Right. And I think that's what I think the president and his team at this point are trying to convey to Americans. What are the signs to look at that say you really need to have a test at this point, because we don't have a test for everyone right now. Is there a peak point? I know Dr. Fauci said it's not going to necessarily be a peak, but I think more like a
hump.
A hump. That's what he said. Thanks, Jason. So is there a point where you feel like we could be, as a healthcare system in our country, definitely taxed?
That's really the fear. We talked about that S-curve or logarithmic curve, so people shouldn't panic right now. There are certainly going to be more and more cases reported. Fortunately, deaths in the United States are still below 100. There are several thousand cases. Worldwide, we've seen much more critical situations. But again, we don't really know what the final number will be, and there will be more and more cases. So this is really a matter of just preparing for a worst-case scenario. So people, streets are deserted. I think people are anxious and businesses are suffering. It's important to sort of pull together and do social distancing, personal hygiene, kind of mutual sacrifice or shared sacrifice, not because anyone is individually in a panic. We don't really know what that final number will be, or how many ICU beds will ultimately be needed. You don't want to be in a situation where someone needs an ICU bed and you don't have it.
Quick question, you got to be quick for me, 20 seconds. A vaccine, is that still a 2021 kind of thing?
Multiple companies are working on it. I think we're going to see it within 6 to 9 months is my guesstimate. So I think we'll see it before 2021.
All right. Dr. Ian Lustbader, thank you so much. We really do enjoy talking to you and really appreciate your insight on all of this on an ongoing basis. Dr. Ian Lustbader, Clinical Associate Professor of Medicine, NYU Langone Medical Center, on the phone in New York City. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly, coming up. We're going to get an update on all of that news out of Washington. There was a lot of it. Stick around. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are recovering from yesterday's rout as the government steps up its efforts to offset the financial damage caused by the coronavirus. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 866, the S&P 500 up 124, the Nasdaq Composite up 379. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says markets will remain open despite the COVID-19 pandemic and recent volatility. He says he's spoken with banks and the New York Stock Exchange and all agree on the need to keep operating. As travel demand dries up, layoffs are beginning at Marriott. It is closing some hotels and cutting staff at the rest. Although their paychecks will stop, Marriott says laid-off workers will keep their health benefits for now. Gray Television reportedly is blaming the coronavirus outbreak for a decision to drop its bid for rival TV station owner Tegna. Gray offered to acquire Tegna for $8.5 billion earlier this month. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba, please be done. Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Are you
a half-price dream holiday? Wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free? Wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the Uswitch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown today. The AA. Drive smart. See the AA.com for details.
Yo, look at this, look at this. What do you reckon? Should I swipe right? Yo, check this out, check this out, check this out. Yo, bro. Hey, look at this. Yo, look at this, look at this. Should I swipe right? Hey, look at this, look at this. Yo, bro, check this out, check this out. Should I swipe right? Check this out. Look, I'm vomiting rainbows.
Oi, get your phone out my face. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry, mate. Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in the car. So don't drive him to distraction. Let a mate concentrate.
The big B&Q Flooring and Tiles event is now on. Get a show-stopping 4 for 3 on a huge range of laminate flooring and tiles. So for an unmissable deal, hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you B&Q it. The value of every fourth item per single transaction in the sending price order will be deducted. Offer ends 30th of March, subject to availability. See DIY.com.
Today is your day. Visualize your goals. Grab the bull of opportunity by the horns of ambition. Because there's 2 yous in future. Which do you want to be?
Or leave the motivation to Vitality. With our life insurance, you could save up to 40% on a Garmin fitness watch to help you keep an eye on your activity levels. Now that's real motivation. Search Vitality Garmin. Life's better with Vitality. Variable discount. Postage and packaging terms and conditions apply.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Have you ever thought, I wish I'd had that information sooner?
Talk to us about applications.
Let's fix that.
You own a number of brands.
Bloomberg Business Week, weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg Business Week, now live on YouTube.
All right, Ed, thank you so much. We do want to take you to New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, who is speaking on the virus.
Who are sick with the cold and flu type symptoms and only have mild or moderate symptoms, the guidance is to stay home. Do not go to the emergency room or a clinic. Remember, there are those who are immediately in real danger who need those facilities to be available to them. The goal for everyone is wait 3 or 4 days, If your symptoms improve, then you're good. If they don't or get worse, that's when you need to contact, first by phone, your healthcare provider. And this has evolved over the last few weeks as this crisis has deepened. So this is what we need people to do. If you're sick, stay home. Do not go to work. Do not go out. Do not come in contact with other people. And then give it 3 or 4 days to see if it develops further. So that's about the announcement today of the 5,000 tests per day capacity going to health and hospitals. I want to go to another update, very different one, but very much about how we have, going forward, how we'll have the capacity, the medical capacity and all the capacity, logistical support that we need to protect New Yorkers in a growing crisis. About an hour ago, I spoke with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States Armed Forces, General Mark Milley. We had a detailed conversation about the capacity that the armed forces could bring to bear to address a crisis like coronavirus. And we went over details in terms of different options of what the military might be able to provide. I want to thank General Milley for his willingness to provide assistance, and it is quite clear that our military is in a high state of readiness, and we agreed to continue to communicate and to work closely. So very, very much appreciate the update that I received from General Milley, and even though we are waiting for a lot to happen, particularly decision-making in Washington to happen, is definitely comforting to hear of the extraordinary capacity of the United States military, and that the military is in a high state of readiness to be able to provide support to not only New York, but other parts of the country as well. Now I want to talk about a question that's on everybody's mind, and that is the issue of shelter in place. This is a reality that is being talked about because this crisis continues to grow. We are all deeply concerned about the direction and the trajectory, even as we get new information daily and hourly, and we're trying to better understand the specific trajectory. It's quite clear this is a fast-growing crisis. In my view, I think the right guidance to give all New Yorkers is, even though a decision has not yet been made by the city or by the state, I think New Yorkers should be prepared right now for the possibility of a shelter-in-place order. It has not happened yet, but it is definitely a possibility at this point. I believe that decision should be made in the next 48 hours, and it's a very, very difficult decision. I want to emphasize that. It is difficult anywhere in the United States of America. It is particularly difficult in a city with such a large population, so densely populated together. But I think the point has come where that decision does have to be made. We will be communicating closely with the state. Obviously, it's a decision we want to make in common. And I think it's just right to let people know that there is that possibility. To be clear, if that moment came, there are tremendously substantial challenges that would have to be met. And I don't take this lightly at all. Folks have to understand that right now, with so many New Yorkers losing employment, losing paychecks, dealing with all sorts of stresses and strains, I'm hearing constantly from people who are tremendously worried about how they're going to make ends meet. In that scenario, a shelter in place begs a lot of questions. What is going to happen with folks who have no money? How are they going to get food? How are they going to get medicines? How are we going to ensure in a dynamic like that that supplies are sufficient for our population? What role does the government need to play to ensure that the proper distribution occurs and no one gets left out? There's a lot of unanswered questions. And I would dare say those questions are particularly difficult in a city as large as New York City. But I believe we have to quickly come to grips with those questions and determine different contingency plans while deciding if this is the right strategy to move forward with. And that statement obviously connects with the update on the number of confirmed cases. Now, we have information that is updated since the governor's earlier press conference today, and you will see that the numbers continue to grow rapidly. So as of this hour, and this is again hour-to-hour changes now, as of this hour, the number of confirmed cases in New York City is 814. The sad reality, the prediction I made last week that we would hit 1,000 cases this week is obviously about to come true, and I'm very sorry to say that. Now, the borough breakdown I will give you now, I believe, I think we can confirm this, is directly connected to that 814 number. So the borough breakdown as of this point, 248 cases in Queens, 277 cases in Manhattan, 157 cases in Brooklyn, 96 cases in the Bronx, and 36 cases in Staten Island. Again, very sorry to say we have lost 7 of our fellow New Yorkers to coronavirus. We will need quickly support from the federal government. Everything I've talked about so far keeps coming back to the federal government. There's more the federal government can do to help us expand testing. There is obviously much that the federal government could do to ensure that the military is brought to bear to the fullest extent to help New York City and other areas that have been hard hit by the coronavirus. There is so much the federal government can do to ensure that people have income. Right now, although there are some promising elements of the stimulus bill, is nowhere near the kind of income replacement that people need in this kind of crisis. I mentioned earlier today the parallel to the New Deal. We've got a crisis on the scale, obviously, on the trajectory of both the epidemic we saw in 1918, not the exact health trajectory. As Dr. Cohen and I were discussing earlier, there was a lot less health care available to New Yorkers and Americans in general a century ago. But in terms of the sheer reach of this disease, the only parallel will be the 1918 influenza epidemic. In terms of the economic dislocation, I think it's fair to say we are going to quickly surpass anything we saw in the Great Recession, and the only measure, the only comparison will be the Great Depression, hopefully not as bad in overall impact, but I think in terms of the sheer reach again, that will be the only comparison. In the Great Depression, the federal government focused on creating jobs to put money in people's pockets. We can't do that now because there won't be scenarios where people can work in congregate settings. There's so many ways we cannot repeat the model of the Great Depression and the New Deal. It's going to take direct income support on a vast scale. And I have said very clearly, the federal government found a way to come up with vast amounts of money to bail out the banking industry a few years ago, to bail out the auto industry, vast amounts of money for a tax cut for the wealthy and corporations, even vaster amounts of money for endless wars that have yielded little for the people of this country. Clearly, the federal government knows how to spend money quickly and on a huge scale. It should be spent on the American people right now, working people who are suffering. They don't have that income replacement. They will not be able to afford food and medicine and the basics. We are sending today additional requests, and there have been a nonstop stream of requests to the federal government. 3 letters going out today, one to the Veterans Administration and to HHS, requesting that unused beds in Veteran Administration hospitals in New York City be freed up for the battle against coronavirus, and requesting that medical supplies be expedited and delivered to New York City, including surgical masks of all the different kinds, surgical gowns, all the elements we need to protect our healthcare workers and allow them to do their work. Sending another additional letter to Secretary Azar, HHS, on specific medical supplies that have been provided but are insufficient in previous shipments we've received. And we're sending a letter to the leadership of the United States House of Representatives, the United States Senate, imploring them to use their power to ensure that the military will be activated in this crisis and that aid will reach New York City and other parts of the country. Some quick additional updates and announcements. In terms of food provided through our schools, this week, as we've said, all schools will be providing breakfast and lunch grab-and-go options at each school. Next week, we will be opening up enrichment centers, learning centers for children of essential workers. They'll be providing breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We are also determining a methodology to provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner at additional pickup sites around the 5 boroughs for young people who need them. This will not, at this moment, be every school. This will be a more concentrated approach, not exactly what we do during summer, but closer to that than to every school building. But there will be ongoing sources of food for students who need them in a new form starting next week. I'm going to go through different items. They don't necessarily all connect, but they're all pertinent. There's been questions previously the last few days about our budget process, an update that we intend to continue the city budget process on schedule, according to the law. And our Office of Management and Budget is continuing to do its work to prepare the budget on time. And you should know that the Office of Management and Budget is working remotely already.
And by doing this, the patient is...
An update related to for-hire vehicles, and for this one, I will be signing an executive order right now. For for-hire vehicles, we want to protect drivers and we want to protect riders alike. This executive order will ban ride shares and pooling of customers. This has been done in agreement with major for-hire vehicle companies such as Uber, Lyft, and Via. And the rule will be one individual customer per vehicle to, of course, create social distancing as best possible within the vehicle. This does not disallow a couple that is together already and actually a real couple. I want to be clear with people, a married couple, for example, or people who live together, or a family that lives under the same roof. Those folks obviously have had deep exposure to each other. It's appropriate for them to share a vehicle, but not people who don't know each other. So we will formalize that now in this executive order.
All right, you've been listening to New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio talking about what his city, New York City, is going to be doing in terms of the virus. We'll continue to monitor that. We do want to take you to the president. He's been meeting with tourism CEOs, those in the travel industry. So let's listen in. This is a playback.
We're profoundly grateful to all of the companies and organizations here today representing tens of thousands of American workers and really representing something so important. It's a place to stay when they come to our country. Such a big business, one of the biggest businesses. And thank you for adopting additional protocols to keep Americans healthy, including enhanced cleaning processes throughout your hotels and buildings. We know that your industry is among the hardest hit by the economic impact of the virus. Our goal is to beat the virus, and we will. We call it the hidden virus, the hidden enemy, with aggressive action now so that we can rebound stronger than ever before, and that's what we're doing. And everyone's cooperating. We're really getting tremendous spirit. Republicans are getting along with Democrats, and a lot of good things are happening. Yesterday, we issued new guidelines for how all Americans can minimize their risk of exposure and stop the transmission of the virus. My administration has taken decisive action to support American workers and businesses. We love our workers. We love those workers. They're incredible. And we're going to come out stronger than ever before, and it's not going to be so long. The IRS will defer tax payments for affected individuals and businesses. Today, the Senate is taking up legislation to provide for free testing, and that'll happen. Paid sick and family medical leave and nutritional assistance for the vulnerable. We're announcing, and we will be announcing again later on, that we're working with Congress to provide rapid relief for affected workers and industries, and this will allow us to emerge from the strongest economy on earth, because we had literally the strongest economy on earth, and now this is in, as of last count, over 124 countries, I understand. 124 countries, unbelievable. But we'll emerge, I really believe we'll emerge stronger, because we'll be doing things differently than this country's done them in the past for many, many decades. And we're deeply committed to ensuring that small businesses have the support they require. The Small Business Administration announced disaster loans which provide impacted businesses with up to $2 million, and we've asked Congress to increase the SBA lending authority. We're going to be going up to $50 billion, and actually much more than that for small businesses, so they'll be helped. In your cases, they're very big businesses, but it's a lot of employees, and so we appreciate it very much. We appreciate you being here, and maybe in front of the media you could say a couple of words about your companies and the number of people you employ. And I pretty much know every one of you in that respect. It's a lot of people, and they're great companies. Please.
Hi, I'm Chris Nassetta. I am CEO of Hilton, and we have 6,000 hotels around the world, about 4,500 hotels in the great United States of America. We employ globally about 450,000 people, about 260,000 people here in America. Mr. President, on behalf of everybody, I'm sure you'll hear this from others, we appreciate you having us here. We appreciate all that you're doing today to keep all of us safe and secure first, and working on trying to secure a good future for the economy, as you point out, that was quite strong, but obviously being impacted by this. Vice President Pence, to you and all others that are working on this day and night, we appreciate it. As the President pointed out, we're one of the biggest industries in the country. We're one of the biggest employers in the country. And our industry, as you will hear from others, has been impacted in a devastating way. I've personally lived through many crises, starting with the S&L, the 9/11 crisis, the Great Recession. I've been doing this for 35 years. Never seen anything like it. And so, we're hoping to have a constructive dialogue about, how we protect the small businesses that make up the bulk of this industry, and how we protect the people on the front lines of this industry. That number, 5 million people that at this point, given what's going on in our industry, are in harm's way. So,
and tell me, so you're in many countries, and how are you doing in other countries? Some are in very, very bad shape.
I was looking at our numbers for last night. It is strikingly similar everywhere in the world. If you look at around the world, within, I would say, just a few days or maybe a week, we will probably be running 10 to 15% occupancy.
And that's pretty much all over the world.
That's everywhere in the world. It's a little bit better here, but catching up. If you look at the major cities around the United States, they're running in the single digits, which means for the first time in 100 years, Hilton has been around 100 years, we've never closed a hotel that wasn't going to be demolished for rebuilding. The bulk of our hotels in the major cities are closing as we speak.
Well, we'll get it open soon, and we're doing a yeoman's effort. I think we're going to be very successful. You'll be back in business soon, but we have to keep your employees going, and the businesses going.
That's our first priority,
and we will be able to do that, Chris. Thank you. But all over the world, it's a disaster.
All over the world, it's a disaster. There's not one part of the world that's not being severely impacted.
Yep. Thank you very much. Please.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Secretary Ross, thank you for taking the time to see us, and thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. I'm the President and CEO for Best Western and also World Hotels. We have about 5,000 hotels around the world. Half the hotels are in the United States. We employ tens of thousands of employees in our company. As Chris has really alluded to, this is a very difficult time and very challenging times for us. Just today, I had a call with one of our franchisees. He was lamenting that although he owns about 10 different hotels in different brands, and some with us and some with other brands, he was lamenting having to lay off hundreds of people in his company. Some of them have been with him for 20, 30 years, and he was really concerned about their livelihood and the safety net. And the other thing that he mentioned was if the government can help with liquidity and access to capital, that would be of great assistance. And he specifically mentioned that his loans were swap loans, and therefore there are severe penalties to refinance. And so if there's any way to alleviate that burden, that
the banks,
straightforward.
Yeah, we're dealing with the banks too, and the banks have been very accommodating. They will be. I think they will be. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Arnie Sorensen, CEO of Marriott. Thanks for giving us your time this afternoon, and appreciate the leadership of all of you as we go through this crisis. I don't need to repeat much of what's been said. We think we have about 750,000 people that wear our name badge around the world every day. Probably about 2/3 of those in the United States.
How many hotel rooms now? Worldwide?
1.4 million, just shy of 1.4 million hotel rooms. And as you know, the business is made up of hotels we run. Often hotels are owned by other investors, but we will operate them. And then also by franchise operators. And they are typically owner-operators. They might range from a Fairfield Inn in a suburban or rural market all the way up to a Ritz-Carlton or a St. Regis someplace. And you asked about the globe. In January, of course, this all starts in China. Business falls by 90%.
All right, folks, we're going to continue monitoring the president's meeting with tourism executives. Let's take you live, though, to Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, also speaking in Washington.
Package here that Congress should...
I think Congress right now should be concerned about the American workers and small business. Interest rates are incredibly low, so there's very little cost of borrowing this money. And as I've said, in different times, we'll fix the deficit. This is not the time to worry about it. This is the time that hardworking Americans are impacted by government decisions. That's when the government has to step up to put money into the economy.
So what about passing the House bill unchanged? Should the Senate pass the House bill unchanged?
We're having conversations with them on that, and that's an ongoing discussion.
Can you talk about small business? What about the airlines and cargo airlines?
Sure. I've had conversations round the clock with all the airline CEOs. I haven't had cargo, but we've had conversations. We obviously have a situation where there's very little traffic. We want to maintain that although we've told people non-essential travel they shouldn't do, but essential travel, we want to have airlines that operate, maybe on a more limited basis. Airlines have a short-term liquidity issue, and absolutely, that's something we talked about today. I've also spoken to the Speaker about that. So we are absolutely part of this. Airlines, hotel, travel, other areas, we're talking about dealing with that.
Secretary Mnuchin, is there any plans for a global economic stimulus? Are you in touch with other world leaders about a global stimulus?
Sure. The President had a G7 leaders conference call yesterday. Director Kudlow was a critical part of putting that together. There was a statement. One of the things they called for was further coordination with central bankers and finance ministers. We'll be having weekly calls of the G7 finance ministers and central bankers. And I think the Fed has been in ongoing discussions with their counterparts.
Can you talk about the bills, the direct checks that you guys are proposing for Americans?
Again, I don't want to go into the specifics where we're going to work with Congress on this, but the president wants to put money in the economy now. This is where if there are people and small businesses that can't make payroll because their business has ceased to exist. We've told people in restaurants, don't go into restaurants. We want to make sure that those business owners have money to pay their employees. We're not going to put money in those business owners just for the sake of them keeping it, but we're going to help them with liquidity to meet their payroll. Thank you, everybody.
The stock market will stay open in the coming weeks?
All right, so that was Secretary of the Treasury, of course, Stephen Mnuchin. This was after a meeting with GOP leaders there up on Capitol Hill. Jason, safe to say the key headline there is the White House is considering an economic stimulus package of $1 trillion to $1.2 trillion to combat fallout from the coronavirus outbreak. And so we're talking about direct cash payments to Americans, maybe about $250 billion worth. That would go out in April, another $250 billion to follow in May if the economy is still struggling. This is according to all of our reporting, but also talking about injecting money to protect small businesses. And as we know, Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin also talking about those ongoing conversations with airline CEOs.
Right.
And of course, we had just come off of the president's meeting with a lot of individuals from the tourism industry, a lot of hotel CEOs who are all dealing with this situation as well.
Right, exactly. So a busy day, a lot of action, a lot of talk going on, and the market reacting pretty positively. Stocks off their highs, but still all the major indices up. The NASDAQ up 5%, S&P up almost 5%, Dow Jones up almost 4%. We're going to keep track of all of this as we go through the afternoon. We're going to get a look at the world of economics. The Fed obviously has been active too. Much more ahead. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week here on Bloomberg.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
This is a message from the government about coronavirus. It's important we all help to protect older people and those with existing health conditions from coronavirus. If you or anyone in your household has a high temperature or a new and continuous cough, even if those symptoms are mild, you should all stay at home. Don't go to the GP or hospital. Instead, go to nhs.uk to check your symptoms and follow the specialist medical advice. Only call NHS 111 if you can't get online or your symptoms worsen. The great majority of people will recover well at home. Protect yourself, protect others, protect the NHS.
The Mona Lisa is only 30 inches tall. The world's hottest chili? 1 inch. And Napoleon? Taller than a Great Dane, but only by 71 centimetres. Who says small can't make an impact? The Peugeot 108 Allure is now available for just $159 per month with $159 initial rental. Our small but mighty car that doesn't have to cost you a small fortune. Peugeot Motor Company PLC, a credit broker not a lender, will introduce you to PSA Finance UK Limited. Personal finance lease, 48 months at $159, 18 plus, guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility and return conditions apply. You will not own the car.
Dear Mum, happy Mother's Day. Thank you for teaching me to live life to the fullest, to say yes to things that scare me, and to always be 100% in the mood.
Morning, yogis. Time to untether from technology and shift our presence to only this room.
Spa day soon?
I said, time to untether from technology.
Love you to the moon and back, Chili Bean. This Mother's Day, heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Get a free card with all flowers when you use code LOVEMUM. Download the app today. Exclusions apply.
World 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York, I'm Doug Krisner. It is 3 p.m. on Wall Street, and the equity market is rebounding from yesterday's rout, the biggest one-day drop since 1987. Today, we have the government stepping up efforts to offset financial damage caused by the outbreak of the coronavirus. We heard earlier from Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, the White House discussing plans for stimulus up to $1.2 trillion, and Mr. Mnuchin pitching lawmakers in Congress on $500 billion in total for checks to Americans. The goal here is to make sure the first round is dispersed in as soon as 2 weeks. Also, from the World Bank, plans for a $2 billion increase in funding in response to the virus. The Washington Post was reporting earlier that the government is in talks with tech companies on tracking the outbreak. And here in New York, Mayor Bill de Blasio saying there are now a total number of cases of 814 in the city of New York. In terms of price action in the equity market, Dow Industrials better by more than 3.6%. In the broader market, we have utility shares leading the S&P 500 higher by 4.7%. NASDAQ Composite is better by nearly 5%. The Fed and other banking regulators are said to be reviewing rules for banks to free up credit. Now, one option would be to further delay the impact of a recent accounting rule change for current expected credit losses. We are also being told that officials are discussing options on leverage limits. And the day began with the Fed saying that it is restarting the emergency lending facility in the commercial paper market. This would allow U.S. corporates to essentially use their short-term IOUs as collateral for cash. in the cash squeeze that we are seeing evidenced by the fact that Heinz, Kraft Heinz, Caesars, and MGM, a number of companies drawing down their credit lines. In the bond market right now, U.S. 10-year Treasury rising in yield by more than 26 basis points. We are at 98 basis points on the 10-year. Got a rally in the dollar today with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index picking up 1.4%. I'm Doug Krisner in New York, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, what a day. What a Tuesday, Carol Masser.
And it's only Tuesday, Lemon.
It's only Tuesday, Lemon. What a week. Fast and furious. Let's get back down to Washington quickly to Anna Edgerton, Deputy Team Leader, looking after Congress. She's looking after everything these days because the center of the world is in Washington, at least is when it comes to fiscal stimulus. We've heard a lot. Anna, help us understand what we just heard from the Treasury Secretary.
Well, it seems like the price of this package just continues to grow. You know, this morning, Mnuchin had asked lawmakers to put together a package that would be about $850 billion of aid for different industries, cash payments for directly to American adults, and also a payroll tax cut. Now that total is topping $1 trillion. So right now the Senate has a measure that was passed by the House last week that they're going to try to pass quickly and then move on to this other gigantic fiscal stimulus that will try to dull the impact of this coronavirus.
How quickly can all this stuff go through?
So the Senate could act very quickly on the House bill as long as there's no objections that will force different procedural measures. It depends on really how this package comes together. It seems like the last of the fiscal hawks have put away their concerns about how much this would cost, and you realize that this is really the time to step in a big, bold way for the economy.
Well, and what's interesting is that Mitch McConnell, I guess a headline crossing, additional bill of much larger scale is needed. I think we're all realizing, certainly when you hear New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio speak about how this is impacting just about everybody, and we hear this from mayors and governors across the country, certainly those in the hardest hit regions, is politics being put aside, Anna, and Republicans and Democrats coming together and understanding about what the mission is here?
Increasingly so. I mean, we're still seeing some kind of snarky comments at the sides, Pelosi saying that this needs to be evidence and science-based, suggesting that not everything the administration does is science-based. But, for the most part, there is an understanding that this is a really unprecedented challenge that lawmakers need to respond to and really need to put the best of the American people first and make sure that they're putting not only the health measures forward, but also the economic measures that is going to dull the impact of this.
And I have to say, Secretary Mnuchin has really become the go-to guy for a lot of these negotiations with the Hill. Notable, it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's kind of two ways for Democrats, especially House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, to engage with the administration. One is, the confrontation of impeachment and kind of pushing back on this very unpopular president. The other one is to get down to the nitty-gritty with his Treasury Secretary, with Steven Mnuchin. And we saw this in the debt limit discussion last summer. We're seeing this now. And he really has become an effective negotiator. One challenge that Mnuchin has, though, is that he doesn't have a very deep bench at the Treasury. So he doesn't have kind of the brain trust that, that they had responding to the 2008-2009 crisis. He's kind of doing this all by himself.
All right, Anna Edgerton, thank you so much. Great update. A fast-moving story. As you say, we are moving in increments of hundreds of billions of dollars as the day goes on in terms of this fiscal stimulus, Carol.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that Mitch McConnell headline, details of a third stimulus have not been determined, but saying that we're going to need something on a much larger scale. And if you do think about this, Jason, this is one of those crises where everyone is being impacted, especially when you're talking about people not being able to go to work, people staying at home, people worried about their income. Really, no one is immune from any of this. All right, we do appreciate Anna Edgerton's time. Let's talk a little bit about Business Week economics. Kathleen Hayes is in our Interactive Broker studio. She's Global Economics and Policy Editor here at Bloomberg News. So tell us a little bit about the bond market right now. What is it telling in terms of how investors see things, and especially as we get more from our global leaders and certainly more from our leaders here in the U.S.?
Carol, I look at my Bloomberg, BTMM, money markets. The 30-year bond is down 8 points in price. The yield is up to 1.59.
So steepening of the yield curve, or?
Yeah, as a matter of fact. But I just think that this is a taste of what's to come if and when the stock market. We don't know what the stock market's going to do tomorrow. We don't know what's going to do at the close, right?
No,
it was
exactly.
down, now it's up. But I think this move up in stocks. So two things. Number one, the move in stocks kind of is an excuse to take some profits off the table, right? If you bought bonds and you got money in your pocket, and probably a lot of people do that. But also the fact that the administration now has stepped up with these stimulus plans, as much as $1.2 trillion in stimulus, is suggestive that, the fiscal authorities in the U.S. and around the world are going to move. And I think that's another thing that's making them realize this is not just going to be a doomsday scenario forever for the economy and what's happening next. I think that's a very important step as well today.
All right, we are seeing a headline across that Majority Leader McConnell is moving forward with a vote on the House stimulus bill. This, I believe, would be the phase 2 piece of this. So let's understand the economics of this even further. Yelena Shalecheva joining us on the phone, senior U.S. economist, of course, for Bloomberg Economics. All right, Yelena, my head is spinning a little bit in terms of all these headlines. Only got about a minute, but help us understand what you're seeing and why the government is reacting so strongly from an economic perspective.
Yes, hi, Jason. So I think that the $1.2 trillion stimulus, which is equivalent to $1,000 checks in 2 weeks, sent directly to the households, is really meeting the definition of being blunt and timely. The question is whether it will be delivered or not. So based on the experience of 2008, the checks came in relatively late. It took about several months for the checks to be delivered to households, and it was just too late. It would be too late in this situation if it takes 2 or 3 months. We need the checks now, and it will be a positive impact. Of course, it will reach a broader swath of the population, such as retirees and under and unemployed people. So it will deliver a large benefit to lower income households. So if it is happening, that's a great thing, and right. I think this would really help the economy.
All right, Yelena Shalecheva, thank you so much. Really appreciate that perspective. Let's get to Bob Moon now for world and national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, President Trump is asking Congress to unleash a torrent of emergency economic aid to help people through the financial pain of the coronavirus crisis, with sizable checks, perhaps more than $1,000 each, going directly to Americans in 2 weeks. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says the administration will aim not to send checks to millionaires, but he stressed the need for urgency. The president said today that both sides have put aside politics, but that doesn't mean there isn't a difference of opinion on how best to do it. As the Senate gets down to business on an economic relief package, Senator Chuck Schumer says the $850 billion proposed by the White House isn't good enough.
As more testing becomes available, the number of confirmed coronavirus cases will inevitably increase, and the strain on our public health system will become even greater. We're going to need massive investments to ensure we have the capacity and necessary infrastructure to treat all Americans that need it. Our proposal addresses that as well.
That difference of opinion also extends to a patchwork of rules that vary dizzyingly from place to place. For now, your life and lockdown in the shadow of COVID-19 depends on where you live. As polls open today in Florida, Illinois, and Arizona, Ohio postponed its presidential primary, as Governor Mike DeWine explained, to avoid crowds.
Our goal is that no one will have to choose between their constitutional rights and risking their health.
The Federal Aviation Administration, meantime, says health officials in Chicago confirmed 3 air traffic control workers at the city's Midway Airport have tested positive for the coronavirus. The FAA says there's no immediate effect on operations. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
A pack needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey, because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
The big B&Q Flooring and Tiles event is now on. Get a show-stopping 4 for 3 on a huge range of laminate flooring and tiles. So for an unmissable deal, hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you B&Q it. The value of every fourth item per single transaction in the sending price order will be deducted. Offer ends 30th of March, subject to availability. See DIY.com.
The moment you realise you've drilled through an electric cable. The moment you realise that doesn't just mean no telly on the wall, but no telly full stop. The moment you realise you've got British Gas Home Care. And not just your electrics, but your plumbing, heating and drains are all covered. So the moment you've got a problem, make it our problem. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas Home Care.
The Mona Lisa is only 30 inches tall. The world's hottest chili, 1 inch. And Napoleon, taller than a Great Dane, but only by 71 centimetres. Who says small can't make an impact? The Peugeot 108 Allure is now available for just $159 per month, with $159 initial rental. Our small but mighty car that doesn't have to cost you a small fortune. Peugeot Motor Company PLC, a credit broker not a lender, will introduce you to PSA Finance UK Limited. Personal finance lease, 48 months at $159, 18 plus, guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility and return conditions apply. You will not own the car.
Show her you love her with a present from the perfume shop. This Mother's Day, we've got gifting covered with our wide range of new and iconic scents, like Carolina Herrera Good Girl, Fantastic Pink Collector's Edition, exclusive to the perfume shop. Happy Mother's Day with love from the perfume shop. Visit us in store, shop online, 24/7 at theperfumeshop.com.
this week's On the Media, the president thought he could defeat the narrative of COVID-19 with his usual tactic of, quote, censorship through noise. But the virus is proving resistant.
People's lives are going to be disrupted on a daily basis, and as that happens, the alternate reality he's created is inevitably going to implode.
Catch On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
So you got to know first that we're seeing a recovery in U.S. equities after that dramatic sell-off yesterday. It was the biggest rout since 1987. But I want to bring you up to speed on what's happening in Europe because leaders within the European Union have agreed to restrict most travel into the continent in an unprecedented move. Basically, they're closing the border for travel for about 30 days. This would apply to non-essential travel. We also have learned now from German Chancellor Angela Merkel that EU ministers have discussed joint debt options, but they at this point have reached no conclusion. The euro much weaker against the dollar now, down about 1.8% at $1.988. The dollar strengthening against the majors here at about 1.5% to the positive side relative to the greenback, or rather looking at the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index. A lot of focus here in the States on the extent to which the government is now stepping in on the fiscal side to support the economy. U.S. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin was saying earlier that the discussions around stimulus involve a plan of up to $1.2 trillion and that Treasury has pitched lawmakers on this idea of $500 billion in total for checks that would go directly to Americans. The first tranche would be sent in as soon as 2 weeks' time. Right now, the Dow is up 3.5%. S&P 500 better by 4.5%. NASDAQ comp better by 4.7%. We're slightly off the best level of the day. The Fed began the day by restarting an emergency lending facility for U.S. corporates to help borrow through the commercial paper market. And we've got the 10-year Treasury now in yield terms back above 1%, if you can believe that. The 10-year is at 1.02%. That's a look at markets.
Man.
Yeah.
These moves are fast. Jason Kelly, right? I mean, somebody just tweeted a few months ago, right? We were all talking about when the market dips, you should buy on the dips, and now we're talking about, bailouts.
Yeah,
it's pretty
absolutely.
remarkable.
The world changed pretty fast. All right, Doug Krisner, thank you so much for that update. Let's move to Andy Brown, editorial director for Bloomberg New Economy, joining us on the phone from New Hampshire. And Andy, I want you to pick up right where Doug was talking about this coordinated effort or lack thereof. We're starting to see some coordination from Europe, but this has not been coordinated overall. But first, I got to ask you, you're well, your family's well. How's everybody doing?
Hey, thanks, Jason. Yeah, I'm well. I'm in New Hampshire, where I have a place in New Hampshire where social distancing isn't a temporary expedient. It's almost a way of life. So,
right.
There aren't that many people up here where I am.
And so what are you seeing, from your perch there as you look across the world? You're in the business of the new economy, and it seems like part of the new economy is every man for himself.
Yeah, this is the way it panned out. I mean, one of the first and biggest casualties of the coronavirus has been global cooperation, international cross-border collaboration. And this is in such stark contrast to what happened back in 2008, where governments all over the world pulled together to prevent a global recession from becoming a global depression. What you're seeing now is piecemeal policy formulated with little or no cross-border consultation, and often in the end working at cross purposes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's fascinating, right? Like, we talk about, we know this is a global crisis, and everybody's facing it together. And yet, when it comes to dealing with it, we're not seeing that kind of coordination. We're watching headlines come out of the EU where, yep, they're figuring out things. It looks like finally together. The U.S. is, charting its own course, Andy. And, if ever, we need more global cooperation on this than ever before.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, I have to tell you that if we're going to beat back this coronavirus, if we're going to prevent a, global recession from turning into global depression, we have to have, this is not optional. You have to have global collaboration, and particularly between the U.S. and China. You think about this. What really should be happening right now between the U.S. and China is that they should be agreeing to accelerate the search for a vaccine against coronavirus. They have the largest pools of scientists and researchers in the world. They are the world's two data giants, and not just the search for a vaccine, right? For the manufacture and the distribution of all kinds of emergency medical equipment, whether you're talking about face masks or respirators or ventilators, these two countries need to be working right now together to combat this. And what are we seeing? The two of them are basically shooting poison barbs at each other. We heard it today. Well, Donald Trump is tweeting about the Chinese virus, right? And just a few hours ago, we hear from Beijing that that they're going to be booting out all the American journalists from the New York Times, Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal. The exact opposite of pulling together that we need to see from the world's two largest economies.
And I have to say, I keep thinking about, because we don't know enough about this particular virus, and that's what we keep hearing from the medical experts and the health community. And what happens if cases start to pick up again, whether it's in a few months or later this year? Like, there needs to be global tracking of it at this point so that we can make sure countries can get ahead of it and countries can share what seems to be the most effective policies in dealing with it.
Well, that's exactly right. And to your point, this is what we're seeing, right? So Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, South Korea, that really seemed that and they did have the coronavirus under control. And now you're starting to see the numbers ticking up again as infected travelers arrive in these places from Europe, from the United States. So it's a global problem. It's going to be with us. It's going to be with us, for potentially another couple of years. We shouldn't be surprised, okay? This is the product of years of populists coming into power in government, country after country around the world, and they have been at odds with an international agenda, with globalization. They've torn down international institutions. You take yesterday, we had a meeting of the G7. The G7 agreed that one of the best ways of keeping the global economy going is to maintain open trade. Right. Well, guess what? The Trump administration has just paralyzed the workings of the World Trade Organization, which polices global trade. So you have, and you talk about global collaboration. Donald Trump has spent the last 4 years picking trade battles and other battles with China, with the European Union, and so on. And this is the big difference between now and 2008. 2008, the U.S. took leadership. Right.
Very different.
And the U.S. is, I'm afraid, when it comes to all aspects of this problem, really is not in a position anymore to lead.
All right, Andy Brown, we're going to leave it there. Always good to catch up with you. Managing editor for our Bloomberg New Economy Group, joining us on the phone from New Hampshire. Much more ahead. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks remain sharply higher in the final hour, but the market is on track to recover only a small portion of yesterday's losses. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 709, the S&P 500 up 111, the Nasdaq Composite up 337. The White House reportedly is working on a plan to allow homeowners whose incomes were cut by the coronavirus to delay mortgage payments. Still to be decided, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association, is a means for them to catch up. Macy's is closing all of its stores for the rest of the month in response to the coronavirus. In a news release, the department store chain said affected workers will continue to be paid and receive benefits. Facebook is paying its 45,000 employees an extra $1,000 to help them cover coronavirus-related costs. The payments are compensation for catered meals, gyms, and other services employees usually get in the office. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The big B&Q Flooring and Tiles event is now on. Get a show-stopping 4 for 3 on a huge range of laminate flooring and tiles. So for an unmissable deal, hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you B&Q it. The value of every fourth item per single transaction in descending price order will be deducted. Offer ends 30th of March, subject to availability. See DIY.com.
Show her you love her with a present from the perfume shop. This Mother's Day, we've got gifting covered with our wide range of new and iconic scents, like Carolina Herrera Good Girl, fantastic pink collector's edition, exclusive to the perfume shop. Happy Mother's Day with love from the perfume shop. Visit us in store, shop online 24/7 at theperfumeshop.com.
The moment you realise you've drilled through an electric cable. The moment you realise that doesn't just mean no telly on the wall, but no telly full stop. The moment you realise you've got British Gas Home Care. And not just your electrics, but your plumbing, heating and drains are all covered. So the moment you've got a problem, make it our problem. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas Home Care.
Petrol or electric? Why choose petrol and electric? Discover the BMW plug-in hybrid and electric range. Visit your BMW retailer. Sometimes electric, always BMW.
Make life easy with Sky TV and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q. Discover Sky originals like Intelligence.
I think we can learn a lot from each other.
Right next to Netflix originals like You.
It's nice to meet you, love.
Find them all side by side on Sky Q. So, get Sky Ultimate TV for just £25 a month. Easy. Visit sky.com and join today. Ends April 30th. Prices may change. 18-month minimum term on Sky Signature. Set up £20 requires Sky Q connected to broadband. Correct at March 13th. Terms apply.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
On this week's On the Media, the president thought he could defeat the narrative of COVID-19 with his usual tactic of, quote, censorship through noise. But the virus is proving resistant.
People's lives are going to be disrupted on a daily basis, and as that happens, the alternate reality he's created is inevitably going to implode.
Catch On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league to stat-pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
We encourage everyone to maximize the use of telehealth.
You know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
And you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week on a very busy Tuesday. Coming up, we're going to hear from Mr. Dave Wilson talking to us about U.S. restaurant business. Looking forward to hearing what he has to say about that. It is at the center of all of what we're talking about, it feels like, Carol.
Absolutely. It's an industry we're watching. We'll get to that in just a moment. In the meantime, let's get back to your top business stories and an update on trading. 29 minutes to go, Doug Christner.
Yeah, we're at higher levels, Carol. The question is, will we hold? It looks like that's a distinct possibility on the notion that we're going to see much more in the way of economic stimulus, this time through fiscal stimulus. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin saying that the White House is in discussion with members of Congress on 1.2, it could be as much as $1.2 trillion stimulus. And we have indications from the European Union leaders there restricting most travel into the continent in an unprecedented move. The restrictions apply to all non-EU citizens for at least an initial 30 days. And Germany's Angela Merkel saying that EU ministers have discussed joint debt options. No conclusions yet have been reached. We really don't know what that would mean for the moment. Here in the U.S., the Fed began the day by indicating it has restarted an emergency lending facility through the commercial paper market. So if you look at price action in stocks right now, the Dow is up 3%, S&P 500 better by about 4%, NASDAQ Composite holding on to a gain of about 4.5%. 10-year Treasury now at 1% in yield terms. We are up by about 82 basis points on the day. That's 28 basis points on the day. 28 basis points. We had been yielding 82 basis points earlier.
Over there?
Yeah. Maybe it's the corona.
No,
better not be that.
It's just a lot going on.
Oil down by more than 6%. We're at 26.87 on active WTI. I'm going to get out of here before I get in trouble. That's a wrap on markets.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week.
All right.
Van Morrison. It makes me feel a little bit better in this world.
Anybody who sings about brown-eyed girls is like top in my book.
They're okay with you?
Totally. Just gonna say. So, Dave Wilson, what do you got for us?
And we should note, Van Morrison's from Northern Ireland. It is St. Patrick's Day, after all.
Thank you for remembering, Dave.
So a little bit of the Irish, I know, with
my
no
Czech
parade here in Manhattan.
Neglected to mention it.
Yeah, well, there you go. Somebody had to. And I am talking about green, so after all, it kind of fits, even if the subject of the moment is pizza rather than, say, corned beef and cabbage. But in any case, all this business about restaurants, having to shut down their dining rooms, go to takeout and delivery only, you stop and think for a second. There are at least a couple of companies out there that have been takeout and delivery only basically since they started. And that's, what you get out of the pizza chains, right? Now, Papa John's is one that came to mind. And in fact, if you go back to when an S&P restaurant index peaked back at the end of August, set a record, Papa John's was higher as recently as last week, and it's kind of tailed off along with the rest of the restaurant chains, which are really hurting in a lot of cases. Then there's Domino's. It's in a class by itself now.
All right, what's going on?
It's the one stock in the S&P restaurant index, S&P 1500, so you're including larger companies, mid-sized, smaller ones, the whole gamut. It's the only one that's up this year. And when you look at last August, when that industry gauge set its record, it's up more than 31%.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
That's pretty remarkable. That's impressive.
Papa John's is down 24%, and it's the second best performer. So it just goes to show you how much the restaurant industry has been so devastated by what's happened with the coronavirus. And on top of that, how well Domino's has done relative to its peers. And it's something I've highlighted before, that if you looked at their performance going back to 2004 when they went public, it's comparable to another company that came public around the same time. That would be Alphabet, the owner of Google.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing. I mean, it is amazing. How do people learn more about this chart, Dave?
Oh, Jason, this is an easy one. If you haven't seen the chart already, send me an email. I'll get it to you with the explanation that goes with it and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
What I will say, can I just say, though, I do think about if people are going to be ordering out more, since we haven't we haven't seen any problems with food delivery in terms of spreading the virus, especially how chains are delivering. I do wonder if it's a much more affordable option. And so for those who might not normally order out or finding themselves having to order out a lot more, this is an easier way to do it and cheaper way.
Sure it is, and of course you can always go pick it up at the store, which would bring down the cost even more as opposed to paying the delivery man. But the idea of being able to stay at home and have food come to you, I mean, let's face it, that's a big part of Domino's appeal. I mean, remember for years that they had the 30-minute delivery guarantee? I mean, they've since gotten away from that, but at least it shows you, how important that business is to the company. And then, it's how people think of Domino's. So you'd figure the pizza chains would benefit at a time when it's all about getting food to people's houses.
Right. Well, and you do have Uber Eats, I believe, revisiting its fees and things like that because the whole world is changing now. And I would imagine part of what they're experimenting with is maybe losing a little bit of money now. And Carol, you know this from being an Uber Eats customer, I believe, that, once you sort of get into that habit, it's there. And listen, I think, and Dave, we've talked with you about this a lot. The world is changing. What we don't know is what's changing permanently and what's changing just for now. And you just think about people's habits and consumption and ordering online and delivery and food service and all that. We just don't know. We just don't know.
We absolutely don't. And by the way, Jason, you can hold that thought because we can come back to it in about half an hour when I bring you my stock of the day.
I know.
That's another deep tease.
This is all about just teeing you up time and time again, Dave Wilson.
You're too kind, Jason. Much too kind.
With your chart and your stock, we very much appreciate it. Do want to just take a quick look at the markets, Carol, because we've obviously been watching them all day. We do have all of the major indices, as you heard Doug Krisner say. The Dow up 4%, the S&P and NASDAQ up better than 5%. So holding those gains, the question as Doug brought up is, can we hold them? This is the critical, last half hour of the session, and we have seen a lot of action here at this point of the trade in days past.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I'm going to be watching very closely. 20 minutes left to go in today's trading day to see what kind of action we get into the closing bell. I do think, investors are certainly happy to see, leaders, jumping into action, and then programs are being considered. And now it's just a case of getting them passed, certainly here in the Congress, and then getting them out to people and to businesses. So something we'll be tracking. All right, let's get back to world and national news headlines. Back over to Bob when we go in our 1130 newsroom. Hey, Bob.
Carol, the Trump administration says Americans need cash now and that it's not the time to worry about the deficit. And as Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports, cutting payroll taxes apparently isn't fast enough to give the economy the shot it needs.
Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said at the daily coronavirus briefing that the fastest way to get money into the pockets of people who need it is to send it directly to them.
We're looking at sending checks to Americans immediately. And what we've heard from hardworking Americans, many companies have now shut down, whether it's bars or restaurants. Americans need cash now in the next 2 weeks.
Mnuchin said there would be government help also to hard-hit travel industries as well as to small businesses. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
You've no doubt seen empty shelves at your local grocery store, but industry leaders say don't worry, the U.S. is not running out of groceries anytime soon. And the head of the National Grocers Association, Craig Ferreira, says the supply chain is working as it should.
As you can imagine, our stores are experiencing what really has just been an unprecedented demand, which we've never seen before. So it's taken a little bit of time to get the product moving through the supply chain, getting it through distribution centers, on the trucks, on the stores, but product is flowing, stores are getting filled up, and we're moving along at a good clip.
As we've been discussing, Amazon.com is prioritizing the stocking of household staples and medical supplies as it struggles to deal with a surge in demand for online orders from customers avoiding stores during the coronavirus pandemic. The online retailer said today it will only accept shipments of cleaning equipment, medical supplies, and household goods from suppliers at its warehouses. I'm Bob Moon, Bloomberg News.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Yo, look at this, look at this. What do you reckon? Should I swipe right? Yo, check this out, check this out, check this out. Yo, bro. Hey, look at this. Yo, look at this, look at this. Should I swipe right? Hey, look over here. Yo, bro, check this out, check this out. Should I swipe right? Check this out. Look, I'm vomiting rainbows.
Boy, get your phone out my face. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry, mate. Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in the car. So don't drive him to distraction. Let a mate concentrate.
Hello, I'm here at the Race for Life 5K, joined by Jackie Clark. Jackie, what would first place today mean to you?
I think you've got the wrong race, love. This is Race for Life. This is about beating cancer, not getting a gold medal.
And how did you train for this event?
I just turned up. It's a walk in the park, literally. Why aren't you doing it? Trainers on, let's go.
Anyone can help beat cancer. Will you? Sign up to Race for Life now, in partnership with Tesco.
We Brits know how to roll our sleeves up. We know how to keep calm and carry on. We also know a great offer when we see one. Like the all-new Vauxhall Corsa with 0 deposit and 0% interest. So, you know what to do. Search Corsa offer. Come off the offer, come off the hour. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Personal contract purchase on selected new Vauxhall Corsas. Subject to status, terms and conditions apply. 18 plus, Vauxhall Finance. Offer ends 31st of March.
Sat in traffic all day? Sit on the edge of your seat tonight with Sky Star.
For my whole life, I didn't know if I even really existed, but I do.
Stay in for an unforgettable night with Joker.
And people are starting to notice.
Watch the latest movie straight from the cinema.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
Joker, available now in Sky Store.
Dear Mum, happy Mother's Day. Thank you for teaching me to live life to the fullest, to say yes to things that scare me, and to always be 100% in the moment.
Morning, yogis. Time to untether from technology and shift our presence to only this room.
Spa day soon?
I said, time to untether from technology.
Love you to the moon and back, Jelly Bean. This Mother's Day, heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Get a free card with all flowers when you use code LOVEMUM. Download the app today, exclusions apply.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
You're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, we're about 13 minutes or so away from the closing bell. The equity market holding on to a gain right now overall. We have the Dow up about 4.7%, rebounding from that big drop yesterday, the worst that we have seen since 1987. A lot of focus today has been on the government stepping up its efforts to offset the financial damage caused by the coronavirus outbreak. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin saying the White House is talking with Congress about a stimulus package worth up to $1.2 trillion. We would assume that some of that is going to target the airline industry. And we also had executives from the hospitality industry. Many of the big hotel companies were at the White House today. Overall, the crisis has cost them, the industry, collectively about $1.4 billion a week. Even so, in spite of hope for some kind of assistance, shares in Marriott down about 13.8% right now, and Hilton is down about 6%. Dow Industrial Average near the best level of the day. We're up about 4.7%. S&P 500 trading higher by 5.6%, and the Nasdaq moving up by more than 6%. Now, as part of that potential stimulus package worth up to $1.2 trillion, Secretary Mnuchin saying that he has pitched the lawmakers in Congress on this idea that there would be direct payments to U.S. citizens, totaling adults now, about $500 billion. It would be set in two tranches, and the first would be perhaps sent out as soon as 2 weeks from now. Also, we heard from the World Bank today, planning to increase their virus response by about $2 billion. Long-term interest rates moving up. The 10-year Treasury has added 30 basis points. We are now above 1% in yield on the 10-year, 1.101%. WTI crude oil down to $27 in the electronic session. We are weaker right now by about 6%. I'm Doug Krisner from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Back to Bloomberg Business Week.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed. It is time for the Drive to the Close. Back with us is Henley Smith, Senior Relationship Manager at New York-based Stone Castle Cash Management, and he joins us on the phone from Connecticut. So, Henley, nice to have you here. First of all, tell us a little bit about your situation. I'm assuming you're working from home. Tell us a little bit about kind of how your world has changed.
Well, yes, working from home. Nice to be with you. I thought I would be in the studio, but we're here up in lovely Connecticut, doing our part to help out the nation. So, yes. We're working from Connecticut. I'm remote usually, but for the most part, it's been an easy switch over. So,
And so what are you hearing, Henley? First of all, glad to hear you're safe and sound, doing your part for social distancing. I'm doing my part from Sleepy Hollow, not too far from you.
Yes.
What are you hearing in terms of your clients? I mean, this is a worrisome market, to say the least. This sort of volatility. I was talking to an executive earlier today, and she said she was traveling a few weeks ago. She was at a big private equity conference and just got the vibe. She called her money manager and said, we got to go half cash here. Did you get a lot of those calls over the past couple months?
Well, that's our expertise as cash management, something we've talked about for a while. And, this is, again, when we're there for our clients. I think, again, cash is something that you just don't go to cash and you're safe. There's a lot of nuances to it. The product that we offer is, fully insured through the FDIC. The questions that we're getting primarily are from institutional clients that use prime money market funds, where there might be some commercial paper exposure. There might be some foreign bank exposure. We're getting calls from those that actually use Treasury and government money market funds as well. We saw a lot of off-the-run Treasuries. The bid-ask spread widened out the last couple of days, which is an expression of illiquidity to a certain degree. And, of course, something that started back in September, as we all know, when the repo markets kind of went wacky. Again, there are people that have exposure and counterparty risk as well. So I have clients that have a full complement of money market and cash vehicles, and it seems to me they're taking that back down even more to make sure that there's no counterparty risk or no credit risk. And, of course, they want to make sure they have liquidity. And that would mean, having not as much term or longer maturities. They want to make sure that they're overnight or a couple of days maturity, and that's been it. So they're really pulling back pretty hard.
So, okay. I mean, how do you qualify this? I mean, in terms of someone who has seen other shocks to the financial markets, and this is obviously, we keep saying it's not a financial market crisis, but it's a health crisis that's creating certainly a lot of stress and strain in the financial markets. So does this remind you of another time? I know we keep talking about either 9/11 or we keep talking about certainly, the financial crisis. How does it remind you?
Yeah, I mean,
what does it remind you of?
Yeah. We're dealing with the unknown. We're dealing with the uncertainty that creates market agita, if you will. It immediately go back 12 years ago to 2008. Again, it's different there. There we were dealing with derivative on derivative on derivative that no one could get any price discovery on and couldn't really quantify the risk. Here again, I think where we've been since that point where, stress testing with the banks, the Volcker rule, all those things that we put in place, I think are working very nicely now. So this isn't a banking crisis. This is, where as we've talked about, it is a health crisis. It's something that'll pass. I think the Federal Reserve and the Treasury are doing what they should be doing.
But if I can, Henley, but at what damage will this pass? I do wonder.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a concern. Obviously, I don't think, again, when I was thinking about it just a couple of days ago, again, it wasn't like there's valuations going into a black hole of nothing, which is what 2008 felt like. Here again, it's, deferred wages, something that we can make up. Yeah, there's going to be some real pain involved, but it's something that I think that we'll all come back from in terms of, again, we'll get those wages back, we'll get those revenues back, and I think that's, to me, I can feel real comforted in that. And I think the government is doing what it should be doing to backstop people so the pain isn't as much as we've worked through this period.
Well, let me ask you about that just in the minute or so we have left, Henley, which is we have seen especially the Fed be incredibly active over the past 48 hours, really, as we think back across it. The initial monetary cut, or the rate cut that we saw Sunday night, that emergency cut, didn't thrill people. Some of the fiscal stimulus that's come in from other parts of the government, but also some of the Fed action has made people feel better. What was the right thing that they did in your read?
Well, again, I'm looking at the markets right now, and as you probably see, the 10-year Treasury is back over 1%.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
A lot of comfort right now. I mean, if the crisis was still unfolding, which it is medically, but if it was still unfolding financially, and again, we're going to be probably dealing with this, the fallout for the next couple of months. But if that was the case, you would see that Treasury, that 10-year Treasury, probably where it was a couple of weeks ago, low, below 0.5%. That's back over 1%. It seems like it's moving in the right direction. That gives me comfort. Also, again, the Treasury yield curve is very positive right now. It's not negative. So that gives me comfort as well that, things are starting to find the right level. Of course, everything went wacky. We tried to find exactly where we were at. We're still dealing with that, but I think financially we're starting to get our legs again.
All right, Henley Smith, we're going to leave it there. Really appreciate you, Senior Relationship Manager at Stonecastle Cash Management, joining us on the phone from Connecticut. Coming up, we're going to bring you those closing numbers, your movers and shakers, Dave Wilson's Stock of the Day. Stay tuned. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
How should investors be positioning?
We go there.
Let's talk about it.
Attention, all units on tactical.
Boys, just pick a track. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry. Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in the car, so don't drive him to distraction. Let a mate concentrate.
From barbers to dog groomers, at Starling Bank, we'll help you keep your business off the ground. With no monthly fees to weigh you down. Your business is ready for takeoff. Starling Bank, helping business fly.
We Brits know how to roll our sleeves up. We know how to keep calm and carry on. We also know a great offer when we see one. Like the all-new Vauxhall Corsa with 0 deposit and 0% interest. So, you know what to do. Search Corsa offer. Come off the offer, come off the hour. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Personal contract purchase on selected new Vauxhall courses. Subject to status, terms and conditions apply. 18 plus, Vauxhall Finance. Offer ends 31st of March.
Dear Mum, happy Mother's Day. Thank you for teaching me to live life to the fullest, to say yes to things that scare me, and to always be 100% in the mood.
Morning, yogis. Time to untether from technology and shift our presence to only this room.
Spa day soon?
I said, time to untether from technology.
Love you to the moon and back, Jelly Bean. This Mother's Day, heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Get a free card with all flowers when you use code LOVEMUM. Download the app today. Exclusions apply.
Show her you love her with a present from the perfume shop. This Mother's Day, we've got gifting covered with our wide range of new and iconic scents, like Carolina Herrera Good Girl, Fantastic Pink Collector's Edition, exclusive to the perfume shop. Happy Mother's Day with love from the perfume shop. Visit us in store, shop online 24/7 at theperfumeshop.com.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
That's the sound of the closing bell for this Tuesday, March 17th, 2020. An update for the U.S. equity market snapping back from yesterday's sell-off. This update is brought to you by Witham, a forward-thinking technology-driven advisory and accounting firm helping clients to be in a position of strength in today's modern business landscape. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit Witham, WITHUM.com. So the focus today on the plans to mitigate the economic impact of the widening coronavirus outbreak. The Trump administration, we are told, is discussing a plan that could amount to as much as $1.2 trillion in spending. Now, this would include direct payments of $1,000 or more to Americans within 2 weeks' time. We are told Treasury Secretary Mnuchin has pitched the idea of $250 billion in checks to be sent at the end of April, and potentially a second tranche totaling $500 billion in 4 weeks after that if, here's the caveat, there is still a national emergency. At the same time today, we had the Fed restarting an emergency lending facility as a way of helping U.S. companies borrow short-term for their cash needs through the commercial paper market. Let me give you a sense of where things are in the equity trade as we begin to settle out. An up day on the major benchmarks, with the Dow ahead 5.2%, S&P 500 better by nearly 6%. NASDAQ Composite will pick up more than 6.2% on the day. In Europe, EU leaders have agreed to restrict most travel into the continent in an unprecedented move. All non-EU citizens will be impacted initially for 30 days. The euro right now down 1.6% at $1.10. 10-year Treasury back above 1% in yield terms, 1.05%. The dollar stronger against the majors today, with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index rising by 1.4%. WTI crude 26.89. That's the Bloomberg Business Flash.
Move around. Motion creates the motion.
I feel the earth move under my feet.
You move like they do. I've never seen anyone move that fast.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Company's called Movers and Shakers. They cost a little more. That name cracked me up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed, folks. Let's take a look at some of the stocks on the move. Doug giving you the big picture in terms of those major equity averages. S&P 500, most names, no surprise. We've been up pretty much all day today, bouncing around a little bit, but pretty much staying in the green. S&P 500, 392 names in the index, higher today, 112 lower, 1 unchanged. Jason, I just want to take a look at the industry groups because Dave pointed this out. Utilities were your best performer. That's usually a safe play.
Yeah.
So we've got a rally, but utilities, top of the pack, up 13%. Consumer staples were up 8.4%. Real estate were up 6.9%, almost 7%. All of these major industry groups in the S&P 500, there are 11 of them. All of them were higher. At the bottom of the pack were the energy names, up 0.7%. Ahead of that was communication services, up 4%, and consumer discretionary also up about 4%. So there's a look at kind of, everything was higher, but it's interesting to see some of those safer plays and interest rate sensitive areas. They were at the top of the pack.
Well, exactly. And, one of those names, sort of the industrials that fall into that safer category, Dow, that was your biggest gainer, I believe, on the S&P, right?
Yep,
and
up
so
20%.
Yeah. I mean, and those stocks have gotten beaten up at times, but you do see that as a pretty consistent theme here as people try and figure out how does this move forward. And look, we are far from being out of the woods here.
Can we do FedEx? Let's do FedEx earnings because they're
do
crossing the Bloomberg terminal. FedEx third quarter adjusted EPS $1.41 versus an estimate of $1.27. So it's a beat for the third quarter there, but it's suspending its year outlook. And this is something that we have heard from many companies because the visibility is just not quite there in terms of the impact of the coronavirus. FedEx plays into this, right? If there's a lot of business not actually happening, a lot of things not moving around the world in terms of packages and supplies and supply chains and so on, you're going to see these types of companies getting hurt. So take a look at FedEx here in the after hours. Jason, what do we see?
It's up. It's up about 5.3%. I think, people are...
well, it's a big beat for the third quarter. Certainly the earnings number. And revenues, $17.5 billion versus an estimate of $16.82. That, too, is a big beat. So on that explains probably that rally.
It's also sort of interesting, and we'll talk to Lee Glasgow a little bit later in the show about this, but it's interesting. At this point, suspending guidance for 2020, no one's worried about that at this point. I mean, they would think it was weird if you kept your guidance or, even tried
what do you know?
Yeah, what do you know, bro? I mean, we're seeing that across the board. So that is no longer an issue for a lot of people. So the stock trading up, obviously, the devil's in the details, and we'll hear what they have to say on the call because obviously global shipping demand is such an important economic indicator.
Yeah.
Then again, if you think about people ordering things online and all the shipping that has to happen. If they can keep their supply chain going and keep everybody healthy to the extent that they can keep delivering packages, we're in a little bit of a different, they're in a different maybe mindset than others are.
And let's not forget, this is one of the shipping companies that certainly has international exposure. About $22 billion of their revenue is international. $47 billion is here in the United States, but nonetheless, they do have that international exposure. So we're going to see certainly some insight into what's going on outside the United States as well. What else are you looking at?
I was also looking at, let me just see what I just said to the
Hilton
team.
was one of the names, right?
Hilton was definitely one of the names, and we may talk about them a little bit later as well. Those stocks are trading off, even though they clearly have the attention of the president. They were there at the White House, but, those companies are just going to have a brutal stretch because it is, and I know this comparison is tough, but many people keep coming back to it. Post 9/11, this uncertainty of when people start traveling again, there's in some ways even more uncertainty at this point because we don't know how long this is going to last, and it's not geographically isolated in any way, shape, or form, and so you do just wonder what's going on. You want to do the VIX?
Well, I do. I just want to mention Noble and Apache. Those were your two biggest decliners. So the energy names, as Saudi pumped more oil into the system or released it, and I do want to mention Darden Restaurants. Their same-store sales set to plummet in the fourth quarter. That stock alone was your fourth biggest decliner, down 16%.
All right, the VIX, just taking a quick look at that, after being up 43% yesterday and closing at 82, down 11% today, closing at 73.28. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you?
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson. Dave Wilson back with us in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. We teased it earlier. It was a big gainer today. What's going on?
Talking Blue Apron Holdings, Jason. It's a provider of meal kits that have food items and related recipes. They're delivered every week to customers' homes. Blue Apron was founded in 2012 and made its initial public offering in 2017. The ticker is APRN. Now, the shares fell on the first day of trading and kept dropping as losses mounted and revenue declined. Blue Apron reacted with a reverse stock split in June. Holders ended up with one share for every 15 they own. Last month, the company said it would consider a sale and other options. None of this helped. Blue Apron fell 99% from its IPO price to reach a new low last week. The company ended the week with a market value of $30 million, just a tenth of the amount raised in the IPO. Then came that shift to takeout and delivery only for many restaurants because of the coronavirus. This led to speculation that Blue Apron might find some renewed interest for its products, or perhaps for the company itself. Now, Blue Apron shares climbed Monday by 67.5%. Today, they did even better with a surge of 71.5%. Now, the company isn't back to $100 million of market value just yet, but it's getting a whole lot closer.
With those two gains, it's still down 0.5% this year. I know that's tremendous, but I do wonder, you still need workers to be able to fill those meal kits.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Skeptical. Carol, skeptical. Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Let's get out to San Francisco. Ed Baxter's there with world and national headlines. Hey, Ed.
All right. Hey, Jason. White House pushing $1 trillion stimulus for the economy. We've been talking here on Bloomberg. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin wants $250 billion in direct cash payments of roughly $1,000 sent directly to families. Meanwhile, the administration's medical team, led by Dr. Anthony Fauci, says it may be several weeks to quantify the social separation mitigation success. He strongly is pleading with younger people in society to not go to bars and clubs.
You don't want to put your loved ones at risk, particularly the ones who are elderly and the ones who have compromised conditions. We can't do this without the young people cooperating. Please cooperate with us.
Taking it a step further, Dr. Deborah Birx.
I really want to applaud the private sector who are now creating senior-only shopping times.
In the San Francisco Bay Area, which is under basic lockdown here, has people in large part abiding by the shelter in place. But there is some real fear, which San Francisco Mayor London Breed is trying to calm today.
These measures will be disruptive to day-to-day life,
but there is no need to panic.
She says police services are in full force. UK, which has been criticized for lack of action, is stepping in today with Prime Minister saying this is like wartime, and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, saying economic help is on the way.
We will support jobs. We will support incomes. We will support businesses. And we will help you protect your loved ones.
And Ohio has postponed its primary vote today. Some poll workers did not show up in Florida, along with Arizona. Illinois primaries are on. We will have special coverage later.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow enjoy each other's company.
Most of us don't speak Mandarin. John, do you speak Mandarin?
I do not speak Mandarin.
I just wanted to check that.
Almost as much as they enjoy grilling economic experts.
When this is over, do you bounce back, or is there a lasting weakness to it?
Which means that you will enjoy listening.
If things get worse, we're ready to do more.
Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast.
How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team?
Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
In the left passenger seat, we've got Dan the Widowmaker. In the right, Face Smash Steve. Oh, a solid left hook from Steve. Blocked by Dan. Dan's got him up against the ropes. Going for a signature pile driver slam. But Steve's wriggled away like a greasy snake. And Steve's got him in a chokehold. He's got him! He's got him!
Boys, pack it in back there. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry. Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in a car. So don't drive him to distraction. Let a mate concentrate.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
You're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Let's get you caught up here at 17 past the hour. So the equity market snapped back from that sell-off yesterday as the focus very much became on the plan to mitigate the economic impact of this widening coronavirus outbreak. From the fiscal side, the Trump administration is now discussing a plan that could amount to as much as $1.2 trillion in spending, and this would include direct payments of $1,000 or more to American adults within 2 weeks' time. And at the same time, on the monetary side, although it's not really monetary, it involves the Fed, a restart of the emergency lending facilities to help U.S. corporates with some of their immediate cash concerns. This would be done through the commercial paper market. And we also learned today that the Fed and other banking regulators have been reviewing several rules that would allow banks to kind of free up credit. The coronavirus is costing the U.S. hotel industry about $1.4 billion a week. Marriott has begun to furlough staff. Stock today down 13%. Hilton Worldwide is planning to close most of its hotels in major U.S. cities. That stock was down nearly 7% today. So the Dow picks up about 5%, 5.2%. S&P 500 by about 6%. NASDAQ comp rises 6.2%. Long-term interest rates move up. 10-year better by more than 36 basis points. We're back above 1% in yield, 1.08%. Crude oil, though, not a great day if you're long. WTI, we were down more than 6% today. Closed the New York session $26.95. That's a look at markets. Back to you guys on Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. Well, FedEx is one of the names people are watching
after the bell, beating estimates for the third quarter, suspending their outlook. No big surprise there. Let's get into it with Lee Klaskow, Bloomberg Intelligence. He joins us on the phone. Lee, great to have you with us. First, I trust all is well and healthy with you.
Yes, I'm working in the home office today.
There you go. Me too. All right. So tell us what you saw from FedEx, because, a lot of times people are coming out with numbers and investors are running for the hills. Not so here.
Yeah, listen, so in their third quarter, they had some good news, if you will. They beat expectations, but I would caveat that in saying that expectations have been extremely low for FedEx. They've kind of disappointed the street for, if you look at the last 12 months, their stock has vastly underperformed the S&P. The stock's down about 48% versus the S&P's down around 11% over the last 12 months. And that compares with UPS, which has underperformed the S&P, but just by 100 basis points. So, FedEx has kind of had a couple quarters of where they've disappointed, and the trends that we've been seeing to create that disappointment haven't gone away. They're seeing weaker economic demand. They're seeing, higher costs because they're expanding their ground service to 6 and 7 days delivery. We all knew about the Amazon business that they lost and then UPS picked up. They're talking about, a mix shift to lower yielding packages, which is B2C versus B2B. These are all things we know about. These are all things that are going to weigh on the company in the coming quarters. And they also, it's relatively, now that the CFO is stepping aside, the team under the current president and CEO, Raj, he needs to coalesce a new management team. Everyone there have been in their positions for less than 2 years. So, they really have a lot to prove. And what I would say is that, the good news for them in the coming months is, while, COVID-19 is definitely going to be a strain on the global economy and demand, it does drive the need for expedited freight. So, if you need product to get to the shelves and it makes economic sense to do it in the air or, one day delivery on the ground, you're going to use a FedEx or UPS or another expedited kind of method. So
that's interesting. The snapback could be good for them.
The snapback can be very good for them. And if, they get TNT integration right, which is the big M&A that they did a couple of years ago, which has kind of been hamstrung by a cyber attack that hit that business unit. They're finally, getting some synergies, I would say, in that business. In the next 12 months, hopefully that will improve. And then, we are seeing or hearing that, the Chinese economy is getting back to, quote unquote, a more normal production level. Obviously, they're not 100% yet, but, anecdotally, that's around 75 to 80%. So, as the stuff comes off the assembly line, it's got to get to the shelves, because if anyone's been to a grocery store or a Costco lately, those shelves are pretty barren, especially when it comes to toilet paper and hand sanitizer.
All right, so a few questions. They got $33 billion worth of debt, and I'm assuming some of that is because of that acquisition. Is that manageable? Is this something that we have to worry about, that this is going to be another company that has to tap a credit line or do something? Do we have to be nervous about that debt load for FedEx?
No, because they do have some flexibility in their CapEx. They can delay delivery of planes if they wanted to. They can slow down some of the money that they've been spending in redesigning and upgrading their networks to increase the amount of automation that takes place. So they do have some flexibility. And at the end of the day, they're still profitable. They're still cash flow positive. The world would have to be really bad for FedEx to have a liquidity issue, at least from our standpoint. But, we've seen 2 black swans in the last 2 months, so who knows?
All right, so what do you worry about hearing when they hop on the call with you guys later, Lee?
I'm really curious about, how they kind of quantify the financial impact from COVID-19. They're saying they're not giving guidance anymore. And to be frank, that's a good thing because they really gave some poor guidance over the last 2 years. They were always adjusting it up or down. So it's kind of a good thing that they're kind of stepping away from that. But just to get some, because their margins were just not good. Their margins were 2.8% from a consolidated standpoint. That's down over 300 basis points, and you saw that across the board. Their express business was down significantly. The margins were only 1.5%, and then their ground margins, were almost down by 50%. They were down to about 6.1%. The one, when we're talking about margins, the one good part of their business is FedEx Freight, which is their less than truckload business. A lot of people don't realize this. They're the biggest less than truckload provider, and those margins went up 100 basis points in the quarter.
All right, Lee, we really appreciate your instant context. Lee Klaskow follows FedEx for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us on the phone from home. We all are. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street's wild ride continued with stocks moving sharply higher. The market reversed about a third of yesterday's losses. The Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped 1,049. The S&P 500 climbed 143. The Nasdaq Composite gained 430. The White House is considering an economic stimulus of up to $1.2 trillion to combat fallout from the coronavirus. Sources say Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin wants to send $250 billion in cash payments to Americans next month and again in May if the economy is still struggling. The recession isn't coming, it's here, according to Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs. The only questions now are how deep it will get and how long it will last. Blue Apron shares are surging as restaurants curtail operations and panic buying empty supermarket shelves. Blue Apron gained 71% today, following a 68% surge yesterday. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
To buy your home, you became a house-hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org. Because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Is your old washing machine a bit slow and harsh on your clothes? Try a softer touch with the smooth drum action of the Beko Aquatech at Curry's PC World. It washes twice as gently in as little as half the time as Beko's non-Aquatech, cascading soft lather through your clothes for a faster, kinder wash. And right now, with the soft touch, save up to £50 on the Beko Aquatech range, in store and online at Curry's PC World.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most. on TuneIn.
Learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
Is that good for American finance? What is happening with the head count?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, obviously, we're talking economic stimulus today, Carol, and who better to break it down for us than Stephen Skanke, one of our favorite guests.
Talking to him all day.
He worked in the Treasury, in the White House. He's now a chief economic advisor for Keel Point. Can't wait to talk to him.
All right, first up, back to your top business stories and a look at trading. Here's once again Doug Krisner.
So that idea of economic stimulus on the fiscal side was very much what the market was focused on, particularly when you hear a figure of up to $1.2 trillion. That's going to get your attention. The day began with this idea from the Fed of restarting that emergency lending facility to help companies kind of manage their immediate cash needs through the commercial paper market. They put up their commercial paper as basically a collateral for a short-term loan from the Fed. So there was a lot of positivity when the day began. And to put it in perspective, it's not surprising you're going to get a snapback from that sell-off yesterday where the Dow was down, 13%? Today we're higher by 5.2%.
Right.
The S&P's up 6% on the day.
Getting some clarity.
Yeah, a little bit. NASDAQ Composite was higher by 6.2% on the day. EU leaders restricting travel into the continent. The restrictions apply to all non-EU citizens. It's going to last for at least initially 30 days. Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, saying that ministers discussed also some joint debt options, nothing specific here. And we just had a moment ago from the Bloomberg terminal, Italy's market watchdog has banned short selling for 90 days. We'll have to see how Europe trades in a couple hours from now. The dollar rallied today against the majors. Bloomberg dollar spot up by about 1.4%. I'm seeing the euro down 1.6% at $1.10, and the yen weak as well at $1. Check that. This is in yen. 107 yen, 55 sen, and we've got a 10-year Treasury back above 1%, 1.06%. Carol, Jason.
Right. Doug, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So we do want to get to our next guest. In terms of news out of the Fed today, the Federal Reserve said it will restart a financial crisis-era program to help U.S. companies borrow through the commercial paper market after it came under considerable strain due to the coronavirus pandemic. And this, of course, after a second emergency rate cut that took rates down to zero. We got that second emergency cut on Sunday. Stephen Skanke is Chief Economic Advisor at Keel Point. He is former U.S. Treasury and White House National Security Council staff staff member, based typically in Washington, but joining us from Cape Canaveral, Florida. Stephen, really good to have you here with us. Steve, tell us a little bit about what you've seen from the Fed so far. Logical, makes sense, and is it what we needed?
Well, Carol, thanks. It's always great to be with you. And it's been interesting to watch the Fed act decisively and preemptively over this past week. It's interesting that what they did on Sunday night didn't seem to please the markets very much when they sold off incredibly yesterday.
Why did the market sell off, in your view? Why did they?
I think it was two things. One is the Fed took a lot of actions, and it's hard to understand what all of them mean in a short period of time. And because it was so significant and happened on a Sunday evening, I think markets were afraid that maybe the Fed was afraid of something that wasn't apparent to them. So it was really fearing what the Fed was fearing to be so preemptive on a Sunday evening. I think the second thing is that everyone is still waiting to hear what the fiscal support and stimulus is going to be. There's been a lot of talk about it. The House passed a bill last Friday. They continue to talk about it. Obviously, after the announcements and some of the comments made yesterday from the White House, the markets took a big dive after that. I think out of concern that good discussion, but a more prolonged period from the views of the policy managers of the White House, I think that folks have been expecting, and no specific action on caring for consumers, supporting consumer spending, and doing the things that the government needs to do on the fiscal side, in addition to what they're trying to do on the care side.
Yeah, and so, Steve, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, you've worked inside the Treasury. You understand sort of all the levers that can be pulled. We have seen, we were talking about this with one of our colleagues earlier, we've really seen the Secretary of the Treasury step into this in a clear leadership role. The chief negotiator with the Congress, Stephen Mnuchin, has been. Is that something you expected? How needed is that element at this point?
It's been very needed. He was very present in the negotiations last week with the House and with Speaker Pelosi, and they came to a good first step agreement. And I think that was well received, and it got passed on Friday, but nothing happened with the Senate over the weekend. And there was a lot of conversation, and Secretary Mnuchin was not part of the discussion yesterday, which focused on the epidemiology and care and testing, and the president clearly said that this could continue with us through July and August, and I think he was being wise in saying that, but it was said with a little bit of imprecision, without sort of articulating what that might mean in terms of what the government can do, the Congress and the White House, on the fiscal support side of things. And so that was missed yesterday. And markets closed in the midst of that.
Yeah, they kind of
really
made him pay for that lack of detail, didn't they, yesterday?
They really did. They extracted a big price as a result of that lack of clarity on that point.
Right. So what are you telling your team at Keel Point? I mean, we're seeing lots of stories come out about, big Wall Street firms saying, okay, Morgan Stanley, Goldman declare global recession is underway. How do you see it? What are you telling your team? Is it a case of it's 2 quarters and then we do bounce back pretty quickly once we get through it? How do you see it, Steve?
It's going to depend significantly on what happens in this next quarter and what we also see from China's dive in this first quarter. They're about 2.5 months ahead of the rest of us. They really started to feel the effects and try to do something about this in early to mid-January. And so here we are, I'll just say 2.5 months later, and they're starting to come out the other side. They're reopening some factories. They're starting to refill the supply chain. And that's actually quite encouraging to see that.
If you believe the numbers, right? If you believe the data, because we've done some reporting here in the magazine that says, that apparently factory managers over in China, Wuhan, I think specifically, have been told to kind of turn on the lights to get the energy usage up, so that they meet projections set by the government to show that things are getting, back on tap. You know what? Hang on for a second, Steve, because we do have to take a break, but you've been gracious enough to stick around for us, so we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and continue our conversation. Dr. Stephen Skanke, Chief Economic Advisor at Keel Point, joining us on the phone.
All right, let's get out to San Francisco. Ed Baxter is there with world and national headlines. Hey, Ed.
Hey, Jason. Along with pushing a $1 trillion stimulus package, Senate Democrats are now unveiling a package to spend up to $4,500 to individuals this year. And Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he's waiting to see what everybody comes up with.
It's my intention that the Senate will not adjourn until we have passed significant and bold new steps above and beyond what the House has passed.
Meanwhile, fervent pleas from the doctors advising the Trump administration to younger Americans to please comply with the lifestyle mitigation procedures being put forth. Dr. Anthony Fauci saying it cannot work without cooperation.
Don't get the attitude, well, I'm young, I'm invulnerable. You are, well, in some respects, you're certainly less vulnerable than I am. However, what you might inadvertently do, and I know you don't want to do that,
and that would be to infect somebody less able to fight off the virus. And Dr. Deborah Birx is another temporary lifestyle decisions have to be made.
Things that don't need to be done over the next 2 weeks, don't get it done. If you're a person with an elective surgery, you don't want to go into a hospital right now. There's a lot of distraction.
Yeah, they say both the duration of these guidelines will be affected by how well people abide by them. The EU will stop non-all-essential foreign travel to the bloc for 30 days. Ohio has postponed its primary vote today. Governor Mike DeWine saying he's open to ideas to reschedule, but
I will insist upon a significant period of time so that people have ample opportunity to vote.
And some poll workers didn't show up in Florida. We will have coverage, Arizona, Illinois primaries later today. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to...
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Yes! Go on! Go on! Yes!
Your team just scored a belter. That deserves your favourite food delivered. Like Santa Maria Pizzeria, Sir Geister Bros, or German Doner Kebab. With delivery you can track right to your door in London. That deserves Deliveroo. Download the app today. Geographical restrictions apply, subject to terms and conditions.
Is your old washing machine a bit slow and harsh on your clothes? Try a softer touch with the smooth drum action of the Beko Aquatech at Curry's PC World. It washes twice as gently in as little as half the time as Beko's non-Aquatech, cascading soft lather through your clothes for a faster, kinder wash. And right now, with the soft touch, save up to £50 on the Beko Aquatech range, in store and online at Curry's PC World.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
You know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Lines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
So we had a move higher for U.S. stocks after that dramatic sell-off yesterday. Very much the focus was on plans to mitigate the economic impact of the outbreak where the coronavirus is concerned. Today, the Trump administration discussing a plan that could amount to as much as $1.2 trillion in spending. And we had the Fed restarting that emergency lending facility as a way of helping some U.S. firms deal with their short-term cash needs. They would essentially put their commercial paper up as collateral for an emergency loan from the Fed. Today, the Dow was higher by 5.2%. We had the S&P 500 better by 6%. NASDAQ Composite gains 6.2 on the day. In Europe, a lot of action here. We've got major restrictions on travel as it applies to all non-EU citizens for at least an initial 30 days. Those travel restrictions will be in place. And then German Chancellor Angela Merkel saying that EU ministers discussed some joint debt options. Now, we don't have any specifics, no conclusion yet, although a short while ago, Italy did say, from the point of view of its market watchdog, no more short selling, at least for a 90-day period. The euro right now down about 1.7% against the greenback at $1.998. The dollar was firm against the majors today with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index jumping 1.4%. And we've got a yield now on the U.S. 10-year Treasury back above 1%. We're at 1.05% on the U.S. 10-year. That's a quick look at markets.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. Stephen Skanke is still with us, a former member of several administrations, worked hard in the government, now in the private sector with Keel Point Advisors, joining us on the phone from Cape Canaveral, Florida. So, Steve, I want to pick up where we left off, which is this whole notion of understanding the rest of the world, and specifically China. You know, Carol raised this possibility that we've heard from some of our reporting that, you know, maybe China, as they tend to do, is gaming the data a little bit to show an improvement. How much do you worry about that, especially as as you model out a global economic recovery from this virus?
Well, we always have to be concerned about that. And as you know, and as Carol pointed out, we're always looking at alternative indicators of Chinese economic activity. The rest of the world typically has one estimate of China GDP growth, and China has another one that it reports.
Right.
But what I was mentioning earlier is that even though no doubt there is some amount of turning on the lights and trying to suggest that there's economic activity when there's not, there is also some anecdotal information that just floats by, some of which probably is credible, some maybe not, that indicates that there is a restarting of the production process and filling the supply lane from China. And to the extent that that's happening, that's just helpful information in terms of dating what we might think to be the timeline of this cycle. Where the United States is in it compared to where China was and how they processed through may be completely different. But it's one thing to think that you can come through the illness part of it in 2.5 months than it is to think that it might be 5 or 6 months. And so the more we can get out of China that gives us insight into that, the more it'll be helpful to economic planners and certainly to financial markets in trying to gauge, is this going to be in the United States a deep dive for economic growth and economic indicators and corporate earnings in the second quarter, and then start to come out of it in the third? I think it's pretty clear that earnings are going to suffer certainly in the second and third quarter. Can they come out in the fourth? Maybe. It all depends on how quickly production and spending rebound. But those are things that we're watching for. You probably saw that consumer spending numbers came in fairly positive for the month of February. That was encouraging. They were up a little bit because of auto sales and lower gasoline prices. The consumer confidence numbers that came out a few days ago, still from early March and not fully reflecting what we're experiencing, but relatively positive. All to say that we're coming into this very challenging period of time with a pretty strong base.
Do you feel like the financial markets accurately reflect what's going on?
The financial markets have so much information coming at them. It's really hard to digest and act in real time with all that we're seeing and experiencing. And that's part of what contributes to the markets being off 12 yesterday and up 6 today. And if you sort of go back, it's almost every other day or every other 2 days that we get a rebound. And part of the rebound that we had today was just coming back to a more logical point from overselling off yesterday. And the information that comes in real time. I mean, yesterday, the White House press conference with the president and that other array of talented senior leaders in government was happening in the last hour of the market. How can you expect the market to process that in a way that fully incorporates the information that they're getting and that they just have a different perspective on overnight?
Right. Well, and it's clear that also, and there's been a lot written by us and others about this, that you also have humans fighting machines in the market too, to be honest, and that is in part accounting for a lot of these wild swings. Steve, before we let you go, just got to ask you, I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't. You helped staff the White House National Security Council. You worked in the Treasury. What do you make of this administration's response at this point? You've been in those rooms. You understand the high stakes that are involved here. Where are we in terms of the administration's response?
I think the administration is struggling in what is a very difficult situation. We don't encounter these things all the time, but one of the things that I would say that I see that's different is the resources, the intellectual talent and capacity of the U.S. government is extraordinary and well beyond what is, for the most part, ever tapped into. And I do think if we just sort of look at it objectively, the leadership in the executive branch, I think, was a little bit slow to get fully tapped into all of that talent and resources to as quickly as they might have.
Yeah.
And so we were a little bit slow out of the gate. And when you saw the team that they had arrayed there yesterday, top talent, but they maybe started a little bit late, and so they're in overdrive to catch up. And that's just hard. Anytime you're in government and you're behind the curve, and you've got indicators that are just pummeling you daily. And you're trying to create a sense of calm when it's very hard to do that from behind the wave.
Yeah. All right. We're going to leave it there. Really enjoyed catching up with you. Great perspective, as always. Dr. Stephen Skanke is Chief Economic Advisor for Keel Point, joining us from Florida. He also worked in the Treasury and helped staff the White House National Security Council. He knows what he's talking about, folks, and some really good insights. And Carol, I dare say a little bit of optimism that maybe we're starting to get our arms around where we may go from here. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
A pack needs someone to follow. Don't look now, but they're behind you. Bloomberg Daybreak.
Could we see the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern.
Imports declined 2.8%.
On Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg. The world is listening.
This is the Bloomberg Green Business Report. It's understandable the novel coronavirus has grabbed global attention, but it's not the only existential threat facing our world, and the flow of concerning climate news has not slowed. A new study published last...
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Forests and coral reefs may happen sooner than previously thought. The World Meteorological Organization also warned that about 22 million people were displaced by extreme weather in 2019. And yet some climate summit meetings have been postponed. Such events are essential for governments to draft agreements in advance of the UN's next global climate meeting scheduled to take place in Glasgow in November. In an interview with Bloomberg Television a week ago, the European Union's Environment Commissioner cautioned that the climate emergency hasn't gone anywhere.
We can't be saying that, let's save the planet in 2040 when it's going to be a better time.
That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal. meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Two people who are as fascinated by the markets as you are.
What's your sense of the competitive landscape in the cloud business?
Lisa Abramowitz.
People were talking about potential regulatory pressure.
And Paul Sweeney.
Are you seeing flows into ESG ETFs?
Bloomberg Markets.
What's your main conversation today with some of these corporate executives?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
They're spending a lot of money there.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York, I'm Doug Krisner, 5 p.m. on Wall Street. Let's get you caught up on market action. Today we had in the U.S. equities snapping back from a major sell-off yesterday. The focus today was very much on plans to mitigate the economic impact of the coronavirus outbreak. The Trump administration discussing a plan with members of Congress. It could amount to as much as $1.2 trillion in spending. And the Fed today restarted an emergency lending facility to help U.S. firms with some of their short-term cash needs. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin at one point today said the administration absolutely believes in keeping markets open, although hours may be shortened if necessary. A short while ago, we heard from the NYSE, the exchange, saying it has no current plans to shorten the trading day. Italy's market watchdog, meantime, banning short selling for a 90-day period. On the day, the Dow better by more than 5.2%. We had the S&P 500 higher by 6%, and the NASDAQ composite picking up more than 6.2% on the day. Boeing was down more than 4%, given the negative outlook for the airline industry. Boeing and the airlines it supplies are collectively pushing for about $58 billion in aid from the government. By the way, today, Delta was down more than 11%. And in the oil market, WTI crude oil down more than 6% on fears of a global recession. At the same time, and perhaps a little more troubling, or equally so, Saudi Arabia is planning to boost oil exports even further from April to May, reaching a record of more than 10 million barrels a day. New York crude settling down to $26.95. 10-year Treasury last quoted at a yield of 1.07%, so we pick up about 36 basis points on the day. That's a look at markets. Back to Bloomberg Business Week.
We are up to date. Thank you so much.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
So he is one of our gems, and I've been listening to him. I know Jason has too. Pop in on Surveillance and elsewhere on Bloomberg Radio, especially in the mornings, to give us really an informed perspective on the market environment in light of the coronavirus. Barry Ritholtz is Bloomberg Opinion columnist, host of Masters in Business on Bloomberg Radio. He's founder, chairman, and chief investment officer of Ritholtz Wealth Management. He joins us on the phone from New York City. So, Barry, Jason and I were on our planning call with our team and our producers, and we're like, we want to hear from Barry. And
let's get that guy on.
How do you see this?
So everybody keeps making comparisons to 08, 09. This is not a finance-created debacle. This is, if you want to compare it to anything, it's not the dot-com of 2000. The closest thing I could contextualize this to is September 11th. It's an externality to the financial system, but one that has a giant impact on finance, stock markets, and the economy. In fact, probably a much greater impact on the economy than even 9/11 had.
And is that just owing, Barry, to the global nature of it and the even deeper uncertainty to some extent, because we don't know when this will end?
That certainly is part of it, but if you just look comparing U.S. in 2001 to U.S. today, that was very localized to New York and D.C., and while everybody was on edge, the world changed, but in a series of fairly modest ways. Our attitudes changed a lot. This is something we've never experienced in the modern world. maybe this is comparable to the London bombing during the end of World War II, where you couldn't move about freely. You had to be aware of everything. It was a totally changed dynamic. And the good news about this is once we get past this, the economy will snap back pretty quickly. And I expect, or a little wishful thinking, but I do expect that the stock market will snap back once we're on the other side of this. The wild card, the variable, is we have no idea when this ends. Are we going to be on lockdown for 2 weeks, a month, 2 months? It's still a bit of a crapshoot.
So do bailouts and things make sense, since we do, and I feel like you and others have said that once we get through it, we'll probably be, and the president as well, a pretty incredible snapback. The problem is the duration is going to create, already is, a lot of duress for individuals and a lot of companies.
So one of the big problems with bailouts is moral hazard, and we ran into this in the 08-09 bailouts, and I think we really have to be careful not to reward bad behavior and to make sure that when taxpayers put their dollars at risk, they get a decent return for the risk they assume. Perfect example is the airlines. They've been making a ton of money, and they've been using, there was a Bloomberg story the other day, they've been using 90+% of their free cash flow to buy back stock. Now, and we're talking billions of dollars across the industry. Now, if you have no interest in saving for a rainy day, if you're going to use your money to goose your stock price, well, we'll give you money, but it's going to be expensive, and it should be that way.
Right.
You can't. The same thing goes for the just-in-time lean inventories. You can't have giant profits because you have no margin of safety, and then when you run off the rails, go hat in hand to the government and say, "Hey, we had lots and lots of time to prepare for this, but we were much more concerned with the third quarter, and we had to meet our numbers." So I'm always wary of these big bailouts. We never seem to learn from the past, and we're far too generous. Yes, we should bail out industries that are in trouble, but we should make it so that in the future, perhaps they might want to save a little money for a rainy day.
Right. So, Barry, that leads me so nicely to the next question I wanted to ask you, which is that does come down to decision-making, leadership. I listen to your show every weekend. You talk to titans of industry and investing. As you look across the landscape, who's doing a good job here? Who's sort of stepping in and either leading a company or leading an organization in a way that you think is admirable?
Normally the first person who would come to mind would be Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan, but he just had bypass surgery and is recovering, so he's been a little under the weather. I've seen some smart things come out from Ray Dalio of Bridgewater and Howard Marks of Oaktree, and it certainly seems that the governors of New York State and Washington State have stepped up and really demonstrated leadership from a governmental perspective. And, I'm going to say a sentence now that I never thought I would say in my life. Michael Pence, the Vice President of the United States, is a giant upside surprise when he gets to the podium and starts speaking. He always seems to be in full control of the facts, the figures. He's articulate. He has a very soothing manner. He doesn't inflame everybody's emotions. Pence has really shown sort of a presidential leadership that I have to say is a really pleasant surprise.
Well, and what's interesting is it really speaks to, and Jason and I have had a lot of conversations around the table here at Bloomberg about what everybody's looking for at this point is leadership. Right? Corporate leadership, political leadership. This is crucial, right? We need to know what's happening, what's going on.
Yeah, and it's really important to do a number of things that you would think is a given, but it really isn't. I'm sure that just about every company has had detailed internal discussions. The biggest surprise for us running a relatively small asset management business, and we're still small compared to the big behemoths, is that clients have been much less asking far fewer questions about the market and the economy than they've been asking about So how are you guys going to operate if everybody's working from home? Yeah. How can I adjust my portfolio if I need a check, if I want to buy something? How is everything going to operate? Yeah. Which is kind of a surprise. The good thing, and this is back to the 9/11 comparison,
right?
You know, the SEC made a number of changes that mandated asset managers and brokers and banks to all have backup plans.
Right.
This pandemic is actually being managed more smoothly by the financial sector as a result of some very astute regulations and some good planning post 9/11.
Barry, we got to run, and you're absolutely right. We have learned, right, from those mistakes. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you doing this. And we just want to mention a quick headline crossing the Bloomberg. SoftBank backing away from part of a WeWork bailout plan. That's coming from Dow Jones. All right, off to world and national news headlines, off to San Francisco, and Ed Baxter.
All right, thank you very much, Carol. White House is pushing $1 trillion stimulus for the economy. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin wants $250 billion in direct cash payments of roughly $1,000 sent directly to families, and he wants it done within 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the administration's medical team, led by Dr. Anthony Fauci, says it may be several weeks to quantify the social separation mitigation success. He is strongly pleading with younger people to not go to bars and clubs.
You don't want to put your loved ones at risk, particularly the ones who are elderly and the ones who have compromised conditions. We can't do this without the young people cooperating. Please cooperate with us.
Taking it a step further, Dr. Deborah Birx.
I really want to applaud the private sector who are now creating senior-only shopping times.
And she says probably a good idea not to go ahead for anybody with elective surgeries. In the San Francisco Bay Area here, which is under basic lockdown, people in large part abiding by the shelter in place, but there's some real fear, which San Francisco Mayor London Breed is now trying to calm.
These measures will be disruptive to day-to-day life, but there is no need to panic.
She says police services are in full source. The UK, which has been criticized for lack of action, is stepping in today with Prime Minister saying that this is like wartime and steps will be taken. The EU has closed its borders to all non-citizens for at least 30 days. And the war of words between China and the U.S. has escalated regarding coronavirus. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Ed, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week.
Isn't it amazing where, I don't know how many miles apart, but we can still, through a virtual world, make each other laugh online. Sorry, folks.
We can.
It's just funny how you can kind of work with people far away and still kind of feel a connection. It's very funny.
Well, and I do have the benefit of technology and being able to see you across our system. I'm still disappointed that there will be no Masterhenge because you're sitting in my seat.
Well, actually, the reason there is no Masterhenge is it's cloudy out.
Oh, yeah.
So it wouldn't have happened anyway. Maybe tomorrow.
A little blue sky here in Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Kelly. All right, what do we got?
So, this sort of dovetails a little bit with what we were hearing from Barry Ritholtz. There is uncertainty, and yet, people are poised to buy when this all comes back. And family offices, we've talked about them a lot on this show. They're such a powerful force in the broader investing world. A lot of them are saying, all right, I saw a lot of my holdings go down, but I'm ready to buy as soon as the time is right. Now, nobody should time the market, even super rich folks. That's not how they got rich.
Right.
But they're going to pile in when things start to show even a little bit of good news.
Doug Krisner and I have been talking this conversation about who benefits off of this, and I do think spot on. There's a quote in this story on the Bloomberg that just talks about there's no doubt that huge amounts of wealth will be created out of this pandemic. Who and where? Like, I do wonder globally as this happens too, and different countries are shut down at different times, who is able to seize an opportunity and create, wealth among individuals, among companies, and among countries specifically.
Right. Well, and especially, as you say, as it moves around the world, these are people who have sort of tentacles all over the world. They see how it plays out in one place.
Totally.
They move ahead. They go behind. They do all these different things. Alternatives certainly are a place where a lot of folks are going to park their money to ride this out. Private equity, we haven't talked a lot about it, stands to benefit a lot here, and a lot of family offices we know going in there. This is Bloomberg.
And Bloomberg Bloomberg has all the information you need on the coronavirus, both on the radio and online. For all of our latest coverage on COVID-19, head over to Bloomberg.com/coronavirus.
In the left passenger seat, we've got Dan the Widowmaker. In the right, Face Smash Steve. Oh, a solid left hook from Steve. Blocked by Dan. Dan's got him up against the ropes. Going for a signature pile driver slam. But Steve's wriggled away like a greasy snake. And Steve's got him in a chokehold. He's got him! He's got him!
Boys, pack it in back there. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry. Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in the car. So don't drive him to distraction. Let a mate concentrate.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with the author of a fictional story about a global pandemic that right now feels all too real.
All I did was just drew upon the trends. I just extended them. Unfortunately, real life seems to have outraced even some of my imagination.
Lawrence Wright joins me on the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen to this episode on TuneIn today.
Deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at Babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, quick update on market action today, 17 past the hour. We snapped back from that sell-off yesterday. The focus was very much on fiscal spending. The Trump administration discussing a plan that could amount to as much as $1.2 trillion. Dow up more than 5% on the day. The S&P 500 is better by 6%, and the NASDAQ composite jumps 6.2% on the day. DoubleLine CEO Jeff Gundlach is warning that the stimulus program could be prone to abuse, and he also said today in his webcast there could be some real anger about bailouts at this time, particularly if it favors big corporations and not small businesses. Long-term interest rates move up. 10-year Treasury last quoted in New York at a yield of 1.07%. Crude oil, though, very much down. We were off about 6.5% in New York, settling the session at $26 95. So in addition to concern about a looming global recession, Saudi Arabia is boosting oil exports even further from April to May, reaching a record of more than 10 million barrels per day. That's a quick look at markets. Back to Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, much appreciated, Doug Krisner. All right, let's check in with our next guest. We want to talk a little bit more about the investing world and how investors are handling it. Let's bring in Noah Kerner, CEO of Acorns. It's a micro-investing app. He joins us on the phone from Irvine, California. So talk to us, Noah, first of all, just remind everybody, and welcome, because I know there's a lot going on in the universe. Remind everybody what your company does.
Yeah, so it's good to be here. Acorns helps everyday Americans save and invest small amounts of money for the future. The thing that we're best known for is our roundup feature, where we round up every purchase you make to the nearest dollar and take the spare change and invest that spare change into a diversified portfolio.
And so what are you seeing in terms of the sort of behavior of your clients? Because I would imagine you have a pretty youthful set of folks who use you. You are an app, after all, Noah. So what are you seeing in terms of their reaction at this point?
So our customers actually run the gamut from 18 years old to 98 years old.
There you go.
It's a wide spectrum. The average age is 32 to 33.
Okay.
Geographically, it's really well distributed across America. So we focus a lot on education and financial literacy, which we've been doing pretty much since the beginning. We like to spread messages like every downturn in history has ended in an upturn, and you only lock in losses when you pull your money out, and stay the course and be patient, and messages like this. We've been doing this for a long time. I think these messages have settled in for people. Obviously, this is a tough moment, but we still remind our customers about the history of the markets, and that every downturn has rebounded, and the markets have always gotten stronger. What we've seen from a behavioral perspective, and it's kind of interesting. So our customer growth, meaning new customers coming into Acorns over the last week, have been among the highest days that we've ever seen.
No kidding.
In fact, this past weekend was our biggest weekend on record in terms of new customer growth. So it's exciting.
What do you make of that? What do you think the reason is?
I think there's a heightened awareness of markets and investing today, and whether that's because it's just more part of sort of the general consciousness. I think frankly, the president and the administration, have brought a lot of focus on economic markets, the Dow Jones. I mean, it's part of the conversation in a bigger way in terms of the general public. And then you have a lot of products like ours that have prioritized financial education, particularly in fintech, that have prioritized financial education and spreading this information in simple, easy to digest ways. And that has not been the case in the past.
Yeah.
So I also think, look, people know that the market's been off about 30% already, and that message is out there that, look, the market's on sale.
So wait, clarify for me that there's more activity that you're seeing with existing users, or you're finding new users?
You've got more people signing up.
You've got more people signing up? Is that what exactly?
So in terms of new customers joining Acorns have been higher than we've, in many days. Like, for instance, Thursday, which was the worst day in the market. Well, now I guess it's the second worst day in the market since 1987. It's hard to keep track.
Right.
Since 1987, we did almost 10,000 new accounts. That is close to what we would see like January 2nd, January 3rd, which are our biggest days of the year. That date, in any point in the history, we've never seen that kind of new customer growth. In terms of existing customers, at this point, we haven't really seen a lot of churn happening outside of the norm. We're still seeing focus and people staying committed. There are days where when the market's really bad, you see a little bit of an uptick in withdrawals. But we're really trying to drive home those messages of when the market's down, you lock in your losses, and every downturn in history has ended in an upturn.
And so, you've built a number of companies. I do wonder, this is a both heady but also sort of scary time. What's different about sort of this company where you are, what you've built now, Noah, and what are you learning maybe this time around that you didn't know before?
Well, I'm always learning. I've started 4 companies and Acorns. I spent a lot of time trying to really understand the country and where people are at. Not just, I'm from New York City, but where people are at across America, in all the markets. And I think for a long time people have had rose-colored glasses about the way the quote-unquote rest of the country lives. And I think that the profile of the reality of what's happening in the country has obviously been raised a lot in the last couple of years, but that's not new to me.
Yeah.
70% of Americans not having $1,000 emergency fund, like those kind of statistics, like that's happening, and it's been happening. And so, Acorns was built and is, to help, the rest of us, frankly. I mean, that's what it's about. And, I think, being a part of this mission that we're on has brought me even closer to the reality of what's happening everywhere, and frankly, I'm optimistic about the future.
I think that is a great point, that it is going to show how much of Americans don't and can't really afford to have that safety net. And so maybe there will be something positive that comes out of all of this. Hey, Noah, thanks. We know there's a lot going on in your world, so we appreciate you carving out some time for Jason and myself and Bloomberg Business Week. Noah Kerner is Chief Executive Officer at Acorns, on the phone from Irvine, California. Jason, Masserhinge happening.
I know. I could see you through the video con, sort of straining to get the good Masserhinge photo. It's all good. It's good. We're going to hear more about the consumer, what he and she are dealing with as all this moves ahead. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
News without analysis is like half a bridge.
Why is the debt to GDP ratio still so important?
Those things, once they're set in place, stay around for years.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street's wild ride continued with stocks moving sharply higher. The market reversed about a third of yesterday's losses. The Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped 1,049. The S&P 500 climbed 143. The Nasdaq Composite gained 430. The White House is considering an economic stimulus of up to $1.2 trillion to combat fallout from the coronavirus. Sources say Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin wants to send $250 billion in cash payments to Americans next month, and again in May if the economy is still struggling. The recession isn't coming, it's here, according to Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs. The only questions now are how deep it will get and how long it will last. Blue Apron shares are surging as restaurants curtail operations and panic buying empty supermarket shelves. Blue Apron gained 71% today, following a 68% surge yesterday. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Is your old washing machine a bit slow and harsh on your clothes? Try a softer touch with the smooth drum action of the Beko Aquatech at Curry's PC World. It washes twice as gently in as little as half the time as Beko's non-Aquatech, cascading soft lather through your clothes for a faster, kinder wash. And right now, with the soft touch, save up to £50 on the Beko Aquatech range, in store and online at Curry's PC World.
On this week's On the Media, the president thought he could defeat the narrative of COVID-19 with his usual tactic of, quote, censorship through noise. But the virus is proving resistant.
People's lives are going to be disrupted on a daily basis, and as that happens, the alternate reality he's created is inevitably going to implode.
Catch On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC studios on TuneIn today.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
An exciting career, one where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
If morning is not your favorite part of the day, then maybe you're not listening.
We finally start to make a move.
Tom Keene.
What would you expect from Bezos next?
Jonathan Farrell.
How uncomfortable should central banks be with this situation?
Morning should be good for you.
We had no idea where this would head on that morning after.
Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
I feel a little bit bad that our idiocy forces Ed Kalecki to basically run out of breath to get everything in.
We're taking him down with us.
But still,
Sad.
master edge. I mean, it's important. Coming up, another one of our faves, Seema Shah. She's going to help us understand the retail landscape amid everything going on.
I'm amazed as I was driving home last night. Everything just shut down. All right, we'll get to that in just a moment. First up, back to Doug Krisner.
Okay, so we had the equity market popping today after that big sell-off yesterday. A lot of the focus in today's session was on the steps being undertaken by the government, both at the fiscal level and also where it comes to the Fed. Let's begin with the Fed because the central bank started today by letting us know that policymakers have essentially restarted an emergency lending facility to help U.S. companies with their immediate short-term cash needs. And then later in the day, we learned the Trump administration is discussing a plan that could amount to as much as $1.2 trillion in spending. The Dow today was up 5.2%. S&P 500 picks up 6% on the day. The NASDAQ composite rises by about 6.2%. DoubleLine CEO Jeff Gundlach was warning that the stimulus could be prone to abuse. He said there could be also some real anger here about bailouts, this time vis-a-vis the financial crisis, particularly if it's for big corporations and not for small business. Now, Gundlach was forecasting a 90% chance of recession this year, and as long as we're talking about government stimulus, he sees the federal deficit growing to around $3 trillion. That would be about 15% of GDP. And then when you consider absolutely, consider national debt in the next 2 to 3 years, he sees $30 trillion. This is like approaching the situation that Japan has right now.
Talk about, where are those deficit hawks
Absolutely.
at this point?
But if you look at the behavior of the bond market today, yields were up. 10-year Treasury rises to 1.07%, so we've got a lift on the long end here, 36 basis points. Stronger dollar, a weaker yen, and a weaker euro. Crude oil craters, we were down by more than 6% in New York. I'm Doug Krisner. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Yeah, he says desperate times require a desperate webcast lane, so I think he might have gone on longer than he normally does. Mr. Good luck.
I'm
just joking
surprised.
at
I'm
the
sure
end.
there were a lot of pearls of wisdom there, too.
Totally. And everybody should go to Bloomberg.com. Look for that right through on Jeff Goodluck's webcast. All right, Jason, one of the big important sectors we've been watching, retail.
Absolutely. Seema Shah is with us, Director of Consumer and Retail Trends, old friend of the show. She's now at Credit Intel, joining us on the phone from Long Island. All right, Seema, break it down for us, because obviously retail just getting obliterated in many ways as people are literally staying home, especially that brick and mortar. What are you saying?
Yeah, so basically, as you know, there's a lot of self-isolation going on across the country, and really the only places that people are going to or feel that's a necessity are either the grocery stores, the mass merchants, bank and medical. So really what that means for a discretionary retailer is you have no traffic. And then as it relates to the different initiatives that the government is, local and state governments are placing, many of these retailers, there's been plenty of announcements in the last 48 hours, are closing their stores beginning either yesterday or today, typically for a 2-week period, but also uncertain. They'll sort of assess after 2 weeks. So that is going to be a huge hit to the retail sector as a whole. And it's not just, so that's the negative for the brick and mortar side, but for brick and mortar, it's also showing how valuable it is when you see what's happening with the mass merchants. And the grocers, people want to go there. You want to get what you need right away.
Yeah.
Supply chain is an issue. So online isn't necessarily an obvious thing that you can do for some of these other companies, because what is their supply chain? Who's going to deliver the product? Who's going to pack it? Well, even Amazon is stepping up their hiring, right, so they can fulfill these orders.
Right, but saying they're going to limit it to kind of, really crucial things like food and medical deliveries, which I kind of get. What's interesting, though, I do wonder, and I think Doug had talked about this maybe on Monday, or maybe it was late last week. I think it was on Monday. Just might the supermarkets, which we know run on really low margins, it's not an easy business, but man, when I popped into some of the supermarkets over the weekend, they were packed, and people were buying everything. So is that one sector of retail that might see a little bit of a bump up?
I think definitely, and maybe some of the consumer staples companies, literally who make toilet paper, cleaning, Clorox, that type of stuff, that's what people want. Really, that's really like, I've tried to place orders. Everything is sold out across the board in multiple places. You can't find it in the store. So there's definitely a lot of that going on. I suppose it is like it's a positive for grocery stores in the way that sometimes natural disasters can help boost home improvement.
Right.
But for the rest of retail, it's a long-term risk, and I think you're going to see the impact going into Q1, probably through Q3, assuming that the virus tapers off. But I think it's also going to hit holiday, because this is when companies are starting to plan. The virus started in China, so that supply chain is slowly ramping up while ours is closing down, as is Europe. So there's a lot of moving parts. So I think that's why you're seeing full-year suspension of guidance, because people don't really know what supply side, and demand compression, I think, is going to be high, especially if you start seeing layoffs and
And so Seema, is this the sort of thing that could just tip some retailers who've been struggling for a long time, into oblivion, like out of business? I mean, who's in danger here?
I think so. So when we look at the companies, we really try to keep an eye on the liquidity level and how much of the revolver credit facility these companies have. So it really depends. Obviously, somebody like a Pier 1 that's already in bankruptcy that thought maybe they could come out as a going concern with 450 stores. To me, that seems unlikely now, because now how are you going to exit bankruptcy in this environment? Similarly, GNC came out last night and was like, we're going to delay our filing of our 10K, and we don't think that we have enough funding